as well. Temperatures still below par for this time of year, but it'll probably feel just a touch warmer tomorrow. Goodbye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Antrim, the A55 has reopened away from Belfast, south of the Malone roundabout after an accident. Still long delays, though. On Merseyside, the A572 is closed off the A49 under the M6 at Newton-le-Willows after an accident last night. In Herefordshire, the A4103 is blocked by an accident at Bishop's Froome. On the M5 in Gloucestershire, there's no diesel for cars southbound at the Micklewood services between junctions 13 and 14 south of Stroud. In Essex, there are delays of up to an hour and 20 minutes with some cancelled trains between Colchester and Liverpool Street Station in London after an incident. In London, White Horse Road and Thornton Heath is closed because of an accident, and on the Isle of Wight, Leeson Road at Bonchurch is closed because of a landslip. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Almost half of those seeking to have an affair are happier with their job than with their primary relationship. But what exactly does a cheater do for a living?
Well, medical assistants and nurses, surprisingly, top the lists of professions for female cheaters, and it's jobs in IT or tech for male cheaters, which I think is less of a surprise.
No.
This is all according to a survey by the dating site Ashley Madison. OK,
so why do people cheat? To answer this, we're joined now by broadcaster and psychotherapist Lucy Beresford. Good morning, Lucy.
Morning, Lucy.
Is it OK of me to say naughty nurses in this day and age? Am I going to get cancelled for that?
You're out.
Yeah, I'm out.
Been cancelled.
See ya.
There's the door.
But yes, you're talking about the caring professions, and I think it's very appropriate.
I'm surprised by that.
Women, well, because they're very nurturing, very loving, very giving, whereas the males who are in tech and IT, very strategic.
Is there a link between high-pressure jobs, maybe nurses infamously, you know, they're working long hours, underpaid, stressed out? Is there a link between jobs of that nature and cheating, maybe as a relief?
Absolutely. Is it just about sex, or is it about emotional connection? Is it about emotional validation? And increasingly, people are discovering that their primary relationship is just not a place where they feel safe.
This survey found that personality didn't actually come into it that much. It was about half and half if you're an introvert or an extrovert that you'd be likely to have an affair.
I think that's right. And I think that just speaks to the fact that all people want to have a good emotional connection. So it doesn't matter whether you're really social or whether you're someone who has to recharge your batteries in private time, that actually we only ever want three things in life. We want to feel safe, we want to feel loved, but we also want to feel heard. And in increasingly a number of marriages and long-term relationships, we get into grooves, we get into ruts, and we stop hearing our partner, we stop listening to them, and they stop listening to us.
The People's Channel.
9:30 on Tuesday, the 11th of June. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Beth Turner.
Very good morning to you. So, lawless Britain. Two 12-year-old boys have become the youngest knife killers in Britain after murdering a teenager with a machete in Wolverhampton. Would you want these killers to be named?
Tax-cutting Tories. The Prime Minister will put tax cuts and help for first-time buyers at the heart of the Tory Manifesto, which is being launched this morning.
Is Labour going to look after you? Labour promised 100,000 new child dental appointments, a ban on selling high-caffeinated energy drinks to the under-16s, and mental health support in every school. Does that make sense to you?
And the Lib Dems are launching their Rural GP Fund and promise that all patients will be seen by a doctor within a week. That's going to really get voters going, isn't it? Ban high-energy drinks for under-16s. How do you ban them?
Well, I think they're already banned for under-16s.
But if you buy high-energy drinks in the supermarket and put them in your fridge, how are the government going to ban your 14-year-olds if you've got 14-year-olds drinking them?
They're already banned for under-16s. This is what I can't understand some of these policies at the moment. But what's the thread that unites them?
Nanny state.
Thank you. Let us know your thoughts this morning. gbnews.com/your say. First, are the very latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Bev, Andrew, thank you very much, and good morning to you. It's just after 1:30. The headlines this morning. The rate of unemployment is at its highest level for more than 2 years after it unexpectedly jumped in April. Figures from the Office for National Statistics out this morning show the jobless rate is nearly 4.5%, defying predictions that it would remain unchanged. Job vacancies also saw another sharp drop, the 23rd fall in a row. Election news, and the Conservative Party will launch their manifesto later with a promise to cut national insurance by a further 2p. Labour says the money isn't there and that it wouldn't match that cut. The manifesto is also expected to include help for first home buyers, with changes to stamp duty and what's being called a new and improved Help to Buy scheme. Energy drinks containing large amounts of caffeine would be banned for young people under a plan by Labour. It would see children under the age of 16 blocked from purchasing drinks with more than 150 milligrams of caffeine per litre. The party says it's in response to an outcry from parents and teachers who are seeing the consequences of the unhealthy drinks. Studies show that high levels of caffeine among young people can cause increased blood pressure, sleep disturbances and behavioural problems. Well, Labour says there are no plans to extend that ban to adults. And Elon Musk has claimed that he'll ban Apple devices at his companies if artificial intelligence is integrated into its operating systems. The iPhone makers announced a big move into AI technology, starting with a partnership with OpenAI's ChatGPT. It'll be used to boost some of its apps and improve the Siri voice assistant as part of a suite of new features due to be rolled out later this year. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts. Just scan the code on your screen or go to our website, gbnews.com/alerts.
Very good morning. It's 9:33. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Bev Turner, and Andrew Pearce.
Well, it's shocking, isn't it? 2 boys, the youngest ever convicted murderers convicted of knife crime since the murder of James Bolger back in 1993.
The 12-year-olds were found guilty of murdering a man with a machete in Wolverhampton Park. In a park last year. He was actually a teen, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was 19. He stabbed Sean Sessahai in November. It was unprovoked, random, and in a text exchange, the boys said...
everyone's talking about it. Literally everyone knows.
To which the other boy replied in a voice message, "It is what it is."
And the first boy wrote back, "Everyone knows what happened. I'm scared, man." And this could be the most chilling bit. The second boy replied, "I'm not." And then he said IDRC, which is an abbreviation of I don't really care.
So should they be named? Because, of course, they are children, they're juveniles, and they've not been named. So we've got in the studio the former Labour advisor Scarlett Maguire and Daily Mail columnist Sarah Vine. Let's go, Sarah Vine. Should they be named?
Well, I think the people responsible for them should be named, i.e. their parents.
The parents, yeah.
I mean, the thing is, child killers like this are not a new thing. I mean, the Jamie Bulger thing. There's, you know, it's not a new phenomenon. But I think the time has come to say, you know, if you've got 2 children this age who have clearly been exposed to the kind of influences that have led them to do something like this, you know, we talk about the drill rap, we talk about the violent video games, we talk about all that kind of stuff. You know, there is a parental responsibility question there. I really think there is. And the thing is, I mean, I've got teenagers. I know how difficult they can be. I know how mad they can be. But the thing is, when a child is 10 or 11, they're still children. They don't understand the consequences of their actions, really. They think everything is a game. And we all know, you know, anyone who's been bullied at school knows how naturally cruel and aggressive children can be. It's the job of parents to sort of civilise them and to teach them not to be like that. And to make sure that they have the right influences in their lives so that they don't grow up to be like that. So, I mean, of course they are the perpetrators of the crime and they are the ones who are primarily responsible, but there's a whole hinterland there of other people whose fault this really is.
Well, and Scarlett, there's a photograph on the front of the Mail and the Sun, I think, of one of the boys posing with his machete at 1:30 in the morning, putting a photograph out. 12-year-old boy doing that at
Yeah.
1:30 in the morning?
Yeah, I mean,
if Sarah's right, the parents should be named and shamed.
Well, no, I don't think they should be named. I don't think. I mean, if the parents are named and shamed, we know the boys. I mean, I don't.
Well, everyone in the local community will know who they are anyway.
I don't. I think the parents must be going through hell. I mean, they must feel so guilty about what's happened. No, but actually, what I think is that what we should be looking at is why it happened. And you say they shouldn't be up at 1:30 in the morning, sure. But actually, what were they doing? We know that there are zombie knives, there are machetes. I mean, that's what we need to be thinking about: is how do we get these weapons off the street, right?
I don't think it's about the knives at all. They could have done this with a kitchen knife to some extent. The thing is, one of the boys told the jurors, why did he have the machete? He said, I thought it was cool. And that's the tragedy.
Yeah, it's the culture. It's the culture.
The culture is so depraved is the word I would use, actually.
But the thing is
the music.
As a parent, it's very difficult because now these children have all got mobile phones. So, you know, until 20 or 30 years ago, you could, to an extent, protect children from these terrible influences from the adult world. So they didn't see pornography, they didn't see violent films, there's such a thing as censorship. And the reason we had that was because we understood that young children don't understand the consequences of their actions. They are children. Yeah. They're not adults, so they can't be really held responsible. But now you've got children young, 7, 8, who are just looking at this stuff on the internet, and their brains simply aren't ready to make the judgment. They just aren't fully developed as humans to make the judgment about what's right and what's wrong. And if then you have parents who are not present or who themselves perhaps have the same sort of issues, then you've got a sort of cycle of ever-decreasing circles where children are getting more and more exposed to this kind of thing. And then you have a very vibrant street culture, rap culture, drill rap in particular, which does glorify knifing people and violence. In fact, one of the rappers that one of the boys idolised is himself in prison.
Oh, they've all been in and out of prison. I'm not exaggerating. I mean, he said one of these boys, these killers, was raised by his grandmother. He'd spent £40 on this knife, so he's obviously got access to money as well. Doing what? We don't know. Running for drug gangs, probably, possibly. And he'd posted a picture of himself with this knife called Prison Freestyle. And that was the name of the rapper who is currently serving prison sentence for life for stabbing a victim.
I mean, the thing is,
these are who they idolise.
Some of these rappers are making record deals in jail.
Yeah.
You know, particularly in America, there's a lot of them in America who are sort of richer in prison making these songs than they've ever actually been in real life. That's quite twisted.
I mean, I still think Sarah's right about this central point. If the parents have to be. I mean, you say they must be feeling bad, but what? So what? Are they feeling bad?
I mean, Sarah's just said that he was brought up by his grandmother, right? That actually there are serious problems. But I mean, I think what we have to remember is this is a shocking crime, and one of the reasons it's so shocking is because it doesn't normally happen. It hasn't happened since Jamie Bulger was killed, and actually, what's incredible because there are certainly knives on the street, and there is a whole culture, is actually that we need to deal with that. But you know, Britain is not going to the dogs because of this, right? This is a terrible, terrible one-off.
But knife crime is... The figures for knife crime are up and down the country, the length and breadth, it's up dramatically. It is cool for kids to have a blade.
So therefore...
And how do we change that?
Therefore, I remember years ago talking to the East London police who actually... Every time they caught a boy with a knife, they would go to his parents and they would talk through actually how that if you've got a knife, you're more likely to be stabbed. I mean, actually, we've got to do something instead of sort of saying, you know, this is terrible. We've actually got to do something about it.
But you say that. But the thing is my son was robbed at knife point 2 years ago in our street in Chiswick, Leafy Chiswick, by two young men, probably about the same age as him, maybe slightly younger than him, I'd say, probably 16 or 17, with zombie knives. Now, you know, that is actually not that unusual in the experience of him and his friends.
And they're not.
Another one of his friends who was at Notting Hill Carnival 2 years ago was chased by a group of 4 or 5 of them with zombie knives. And he's a local boy. You know, it's not like he was sort of some sort of naive kind of. So it is it's a culture. Yes, the knives are sort of, they're the instrument, but, it could be anything, to be perfectly honest, because the culture is of aggressive gang behaviour.
And why is prison not a deterrent? I remember hearing an interview with somebody who'd been in prison exactly fitting this profile, and he said, my life outside was dangerous and scary. I had nothing to live for. I wanted to be in prison.
Yeah.
I would have felt safer. He's like, I felt safer going to prison.
Might even learn something.
But going back to the parent
Well, if we had decent prisons. I mean, frankly, when your ex-husband was in charge of prisons, he really tried to do something.
Yes, absolutely.
So that they came out not reoffending and there was education.
He understood. The second he went round all the prisons after he got the job, I remember him coming home absolutely ashen-faced and saying, gosh, because he understood that prisons are essentially full of people who have been failed by the education system.
Yeah.
And so you have another opportunity when they are in prison to try and help them be something other than what they've ended up being. And that, but that's the Conservatives, the Tories get very upset about that sort of thing because they think it should be punishment. But going back to the parent thing, I do think that if parents thought that they might in some way be held responsible for their children's behaviour, for underage children behaviour, I think that would be a contributing factor.
They might be more proactive.
Thing improving.
They might be more proactive.
Exactly, they might be more proactive. There was a case recently in America where 2 parents were convicted because they had allowed their child to get hold of the gun, and then the kid had gone and shot. I think it was a school shooter. I can't really remember the details, but I know that that was it. And they were convicted because the jury said you allowed your child underage to have access to this gun, for which, and so therefore you are responsible. And I think there is a moment where, as parents, you have to say, I can't just blame the lack of youth clubs or the drill rap or the knife or the this or that. I have to accept that I have not done a good job with my child.
But I think, Sarah, so in that case, actually the gun was in the house, right? And quite rightly that the parents didn't stop the son from taking it. But and there was a whole gun culture in the house. But I mean, for all we know, I mean, as you say, a grandmother brought this child up. I mean, and maybe she didn't pay enough attention. But to say it's her fault, I think is really, really difficult.
She's not some 89-year-old granny here we're not thinking about. She was a grandmother, I think, who was probably in her 50s.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's her fault. I'm just saying she should bear some responsibility for it.
They were known to the police, these 2 villains, already. Yeah. And they were at school together. The teachers will have known who they were. Yeah. I can't help but thinking it wouldn't have even come as much of a shock when they eventually killed somebody. At what point does somebody in that community say, those 2 wrong-uns need sorting out? Somebody needs to be keeping an eye on them because they're going to kill someone.
But that's the other thing is that
absence of a father figure in their life.
We don't teach people how to be parents. That's the other thing. Is we do antenatal classes.
We're losing the skill.
And because of the sort of breakdown in traditional family kind of structures, a lot of people just don't know how to be parents. They don't understand.
So don't worry. In Labour's manifesto, they're going to bring in teachers. Are going to teach children how to brush their teeth.
Teachers are not going to teach children.
Will Streeting said it on the TV this morning. Yes, you did 6 minutes every morning.
Can I
say
it's not teachers?
It is.
I think I probably know more about this thing than you do.
I heard him on the television this morning.
It's classroom assistants, and actually, it's really good if children learn to. But look,
if
the
parents teach them to brush
if the parents aren't doing it, so what you say is you've got a bad parent, so we'll let your teeth rot, or are we going to try and get children to brush their teeth? Because there is an absolute problem with massive.
And we're going to ban under 16-year-olds having high energy drinks. Bev said they're already banned. Why are they putting that in the manifesto?
Well, I don't know because I don't write the manifesto, right? But I mean, children don't.
How can you ban it?
Well, how can you ban alcohol, right? It's exactly the same.
When we think about it, because what we're saying is we've got these families who are failing these children, and Sir Keir Starmer was sat here. He would say, "Well, this is exactly why I'm introducing these measures to take the place of the parent, because the parents aren't doing it." Where has it all gone wrong, Sarah?
Well, I mean, the thing is
that
government is not about. There's no silver bullet. There's no magic wand that anyone can wave. It's all about putting in place a number of different measures that will work from a variety of different angles to create a better result. So prisons, schools, all of these things. And there's, the problem with elections is it's all about slogans and it's all about sound bites. But the truth is, this is an endemic problem that goes very, very deep because you've got generations generations and generations of people who don't know how to look after their children, who haven't been parented properly themselves, and therefore don't understand, blah, blah, blah. And then
but there is nothing new. There is nothing new about this. This has been, I mean, I remember when the Jamie Bulger case came up and there was, oh, my God, you know, this is a national thing. And actually, there are parents, and there have always been parents for decades, if not centuries, who do not know how to bring up their children right. This is not a phenomenon of 2024.
Well, let's ask our viewers and listeners, would you name the parents or would you name the children or both?
Right, up next, the issue that won't go away. Sir Keir Starmer has refused to rule out imposing this controversial VAT addition to private school fees as soon as September. That's right, you're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
This is GB News and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but actually it's about you.
And we won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear
all sides
as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's election channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Today we've got two fantastic individuals who have invented a teddy bear to help children who are suffering with mental health.
Yes, so Lynn and Samantha Crilly came up with the idea for the Trouble Muncher toy following Samantha's own battle with an eating disorder and OCD.
Yes, the teddy comes with a notepad and encourages its owners to write down what's troubling them, and then they can pop the note into the rucksack on the bear's back.
I struggled with mental health most of my life, actually, and oh no, it's fine. I've got one. I feel quite sorry for you. But and one thing I always did was message my mum, and it was a thought disassociation kind of technique. I would message you. Even now, I message you thoughts that come into my mind, but massively when I was younger. And I thought, what happens if you're younger and you don't have this?
Yeah, and I think in today's technology-fueled world, I think we go back to basics, and it just helps them to process by writing it down. Everything's so instant these days.
So it's like an indirect way of telling your parents how you're feeling, what you're going through. Such a great idea. What's the feedback been from parents who have got a trouble muncher for their kids? What you've got any stories?
It's been really good. In one household, he sits on the kitchen side, and I think during the day, the parents, the children put their worries in, or at night, and then they know that their parents will look at it during the day. And it's gone into some schools as well.
You'd imagine you'd want one of these trouble munchers in every classroom and in every school up and down the country, because children who are being bullied, for example, who feel like they can't tell their parents, they're too embarrassed to talk about it. This is such an important tool, isn't it, for children to communicate that.
Yeah, well, you were saying Mum's a mental health counsellor, and you had a young child who had Snapchat AI. So you talk to an AI in Snapchat, and that's what they talk to now.
The People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Very good morning. It's 10 to 10 now. Parents are facing a higher cost of private education if Labour come into power at the general election.
Keir Starmer's flagship plan to add 20% VAT to independent school fees is a policy that's caused a row within his own party.
David Morton is a headmaster at the King's School in Gloucester. Good morning, David. Thank you very much for joining us. Presumably the King's School is an independent, fee-paying school. Just give us an idea of how many pupils do you have and how many families do you think this is going to impact?
Yeah, thank you. Good morning. We're an independent day school in Gloucester with 750 children. We go from 3 years old up to 18 years old, and the impact is going to be fairly considerable. We did a survey of our parents, and we got some fairly precise figures back as to how many of them felt it was going to be unaffordable if 20% was added on to the school fees. And that figure was that 80% of our parents said they would find it difficult, with 10% saying they would remove their children immediately. And I think those figures are probably broadly representative of other schools across the UK like us.
Well, David, if I can ask you two things there. What are the fees? And if 10% of parents do take their children out of your school, is your school still viable?
So the fees vary according to the age range. So they will be between around £15,000 and £24,000 for the year. They're slightly cheaper in the primary section of the school, the junior school, and more expensive in the senior school. What we're trying to do is avoid that 10% of parents leaving. So we've taken action already to make sure that doesn't happen. I would say that a school of our size could probably accept 10 or 15 parents leaving, something like that. But that would then remove any surplus that we make for the year. So more than about 20 parents leaving, taking their children out of the school, would cause a real issue for us.
Do you have many people on waiting lists to come into your school? I think quite a few private schools, particularly in areas maybe where the state schools don't get outstanding results, they tend to have a list of those waiting in the wings.
So that is the case in some schools, but it does vary enormously across the country. In this area, we have 7 grammar schools in Gloucestershire, which are really, really popular and highly academically selective. So King's doesn't have long waiting lists now.
What would you say to if the Labour Party were here? They'd say, very sorry about this, but we're worrying about the 93% of pupils who are in the state sector. And there's a row about this, but if it does mean higher class size in the state sector for a few years, so be it.
Yes, I think there's two things about that. There's the impact on the state sector, and there's the impact on the private sector. And at the middle of this is children. You know, they are the ones who are having one chance in life in their time at school, and it can make an enormous difference, the size of class that you're in, quality of the teachers that are there, the resources of the school. And Labour shouldn't make political capital out of children's lives. I don't think that's a good idea at all. So I would say to a Labour leader, were he on this discussion, that they should look at other ways of raising money, because I absolutely agree with the aim, which is increasing funding for state schools. I don't think any independent head teacher in the country would have an issue with that. But I think the way that they're going about doing it, by having a one-size-fits-all flat tax on independent school parents, is not the best way. There are other ways that they could look at as well.
And, of course, you have to give a terms notice. Sir Keir Starmer is saying he can't rule it out till September. Will you give any sort of grace to parents from September if they say, I can't now move my child, but I can't pay this extra 20%? Are you going to let them stay?
Well, we've taken steps at King's to make sure that our parents don't get in that situation. So we've already announced that our fee rise for September is going to be 4%. We've made savings across the school, and we've said if Labour add VAT at 20%, there would be an additional 9% at some point in the future when that comes into action. I think Labour may not have thought through the practicalities of adding VAT onto school fees. There's a huge amount of work to be done with HMRC to work through, and there will undoubtedly be independent schools who contest it.
Thank you, David. David Morton there, headmaster from King's School in Gloucester. A lot to discuss this morning. Here's the weather with Alex.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Bit of a chill out there today. It doesn't really feel like June. There'll be some June sunshine around. There'll also be a fair few showers around as well. Now, the breeze is coming down from the north, hence the chill. Quite a bit of cloud developing through the day, so it's not going to be sunny everywhere, but much of the west, Northern Ireland, Wales, southwest England, western Scotland staying dry and fine. And even further east, there'll be some sunny spells, but expect showers over parts of northern England, the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast. And even if you've got the sunshine, it isn't warm. Temperatures struggling into the mid-teens for many, feeling cooler with that wind, particularly on some of these North Sea coasts. That breeze will continue to bring a few showers around. So for this evening, yes, plenty of showers across East Anglia and the southeast, but for much of southwest England, Wales, it'll be a fine evening. Not very pleasant for sitting out in, because temperatures will be dropping pretty sharply once the sun has set. But a fine day by and large for Northern Ireland, and in fact most of Scotland will be dry dry through the evening. Just the odd shower coming in, but still a significant chill, particularly over the Northern Isles. Temperatures here quickly dropping back down to single figures and feeling cooler with that wind, which will continue to blow through Tuesday evening. The showers, though, well, they should tend to fade away. So many places becoming dry as we go through tonight. So we'll always keep some showers coming into the Northern Isles. We'll keep quite a bit of cloud in some places, but where we have the clear skies, it is going to turn quite chilly again. Temperatures well down into single figures in some rural spots. So another fresh day on Wednesday. The winds, though, won't be as strong on Wednesday, and there won't be as many showers either. Yes, still a sprinkling over eastern England and northeastern Scotland, but I suspect many areas will be dry as we go through tomorrow. Some cloud, but a bit more in the way of sunshine. Those lighter winds as well. Temperatures still below par for this time of year, but it'll probably feel just a touch warmer tomorrow. Goodbye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On Merseyside, the A572 remains closed off the A49 at Newton Le Willows after an accident last night. In Lincolnshire, the A17 is closed off the A151 north of Holbeach after a vehicle caught fire. In Herefordshire, the A4103 is blocked by an accident at Bishop's Froome. There are delays of up to an hour with some cancelled trains between Colchester and Liverpool Street Station in London after an incident. On the M25 in Essex, there's a lane closed anti-clockwise. It's started junction 26 at Waltham Abbey with queues from junction 27 for the M11. On the M4 west of London, it's down to a single lane eastbound after an accident on the elevated section between junctions 2 and 1 from Brentford to Chiswick with queues from junction 3 at Heston. Also in London, White Horse Road's blocked by an accident between Croydon and Thornton Heath, causing delays, and there are delays of up to an hour to trains through Basingstoke because of a signalling problem. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
We're making this summer funner with 3 incredible prizes to be won. First, a fantastic £15,000 in tax-free cash that you can spend on anything you like. Next, there's the latest iPhone 15 with a brand new set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at the UK attraction of your choice. The summer fun could be on us. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 a.m. on Tuesday, the 11th of June. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Bev Turner, and Andrew Pearce.
Lawless Britain. 2 12-year-old boys, the youngest knife killers in Britain. They killed a teenager with a machete in Wolverhampton. We're asking, should they be named?
Tax-cutting Tories. Finally, the Prime Minister will put tax cuts and help for first-time buyers at the heart of the Conservative Party manifesto. Christopher Hope has more.
The Tories unveil their manifesto here at Silverstone Racetrack, but will it be enough to get the party out of second gear? We'll find out soon.
Groan.
Labour looking after you. They're promising 100,000 new child dental appointments, a ban on selling high caffeine energy drinks to under 16s, mental health support in every school.
And are you a Strictly Come Dancing fan? Well, it is absolutely engrossed in a scandal at the moment. The star dancer Giovanni Pernice is axed following growing allegations of threatening and abusive behaviour. We'll bring you up to speed.
I don't know it's a great omen for the Tories doing their manifesto on Silverstone, because back in '97, John Major launched the Tory election campaign, and they went to one of our famous racetracks, and the idea was that Major was going to get in a Formula 1 car. When they got there, it was on blocks with no wheels on.
Which tells you
What was the headline you all wrote? Wheels fall off, Tory campaign.
Oh, no. What do you think about the fact that they've chosen the Silverstone racetrack to launch their campaign? It's just kind of inspired a million puns, hasn't it? Wes Streeting was interviewed this morning. He said, it shows we're all revved up and raring to go. I mean, it's so cheesy.
Well, and Christopher Hope saying, will they get out of second gear? Or will they get out of reverse gear? You could have asked.
Because let's face it, they're not in pole position at the moment, are they, the Tories? I've got a lot more where that came from. Right, GBNews.com/your say. Let us know your thoughts this morning. First, to the very latest news with Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you. It's 2 minutes past 10. The headlines from the newsroom this morning. The Conservative Party will launch their election manifesto later with a promise to cut national insurance by a further 2p. Labour says the money isn't there, though, and that it wouldn't match that cut. The manifesto is also expected to include help for first home buyers, with changes to stamp duty and what's being called a new and improved Help to Buy scheme. Well, it comes after Rishi Sunak dismissed rumours that he considered resigning following the fallout from his decision to leave a D-Day event early. Work and Pension Secretary Mel Stride told GB News this morning that there are big and bold promises to come.
It's a binary choice between ourselves as a party which now is seeing the highest joint level of growth in the G7. We've got inflation down to near normal levels. We've got rising real wages, which has been going on now for 11 consecutive months. And we're now going to be delivering some pretty big tax cuts. We've already cut taxes for 29 million working people, worth £900 for an average earner. We're going to go further in our manifesto.
Mel Stride there speaking to GB News this morning. Well, we've heard earlier that the rate of unemployment is at the highest level for more than 2 years after it unexpectedly jumped in April. Figures from the Office for National Statistics show the jobless rate has nearly hit 4.5%, defying predictions that it would remain unchanged. Job vacancies also saw another sharp drop, the 23rd fall in a row. And there's some good news with inflation dropping to its lowest level since 2021, though economists had expected a bigger drop. Energy drinks containing large amounts of caffeine would be banned for young people under a plan by Labour. It would see children under the age of 16 blocked from purchasing drinks with more than 150 milligrams of caffeine per litre. The party says it's in response to an outcry from parents and teachers who they say are seeing the consequences of the unhealthy drinks. Studies show that high levels of caffeine among young people can cause increased blood pressure, sleep disturbances and behavioural problems. Labour says, though, there are no plans to extend that ban to adults. And staying with Labour, the party are also pledging to add an extra 100,000 dental appointments for young people across the country in an effort to clear backlogs across England. It would see extra slots opened up during evenings and weekends, while supervised brushings would also aim to improve self-care for younger children. The party says it will cost around £109 million, but Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting says it will be funded by tightening tax rules.
So we've committed to deliver 700,000 emergency NHS dentist appointments. 100,000 of those will be targeted at children. There are dentists out there that are willing to do the work, but we have to pay them. So we've committed £100 million to the emergency dentist appointments, which will be paid for by closing tax avoidance and also closing the tax loopholes that are currently left there by the Conservatives in their non-DOMS arrangements.
Next, to some international news for you. The Hamas terror group has now accepted a ceasefire proposal that was passed by the UN last night. The Security Council backed the three-phase plan, which includes the release of hostages and the withdrawal of Israeli forces. A senior member of Hamas says the group will accept the deal and is now ready to begin negotiations over the details. It's after 14 of the 15 members of the United Nations Security Council voted in favour of the ceasefire, with only Russia abstaining. Elon Musk claims that he'll ban Apple devices at his companies if artificial intelligence is integrated into its operating systems. The iPhone makers announced a big move to AI technology, starting with a partnership with OpenAI's ChatGPT. It will be used to boost some of its apps and improve the Siri voice assistant as part of a suite of new features to be rolled out later this year. And a record number of passengers have been passing through Heathrow's terminals over the last 12 months. The airport's announced that 81.5 million people travelled through its complex in the year to the end of May. That's up by almost 10 million. Chief Executive Thomas Woodby says that it shows Heathrow has put the COVID pandemic firmly behind them. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts. Just scan the code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
It's 7 minutes past 10. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
In just over an hour's time, Rishi Sunak will launch the Conservative Party Manifesto.
Bet you can't wait. Key policies will include a tax break for landlords, a further 2p cut to national insurance. We've had 2 of those already this year, and help for first-time buyers by raising the threshold for stamp duty. But will it be enough to turn the electorate?
Let's speak to our political editor, Christopher Hope, who is at Silverstone this morning. Chris, we were just sort of taking the mickey slightly out of that as a chosen location to launch your manifesto, because the puns write themselves, don't they? The Tories aren't exactly in pole position at the moment in this race to number 10. What's the logic there? What are they telling you?
Well, the logic, and morning, Andrew, morning, Bev. The logic of being here in Silverstone is this is a kind of, part of the future. The F1 industry we have in this country is at the absolutely apex of motorsport engineering, and I think that's why they want to demonstrate the importance of high-level, high-tech manufacturing. That's part of the sell from Rishi Sunak in terms of why he backs Britain all the time. And when we were with him in Belfast recently, he's with a high-tech boat manufacturer. So you are seeing this idea of high-tech manufacturing. That's the idea, of course, being on a racetrack and putting petrol in the tank and not being in the pits maybe and getting out of second gear. All the metaphors you mentioned work in politics too, and perhaps escaping from behind Sir Keir Starmer's slipstream to overtake on the final lap. All that can happen in a race, and it can happen in politics too, and that's the hope. But so far, nothing has worked. They're still 20 points behind in the polls. We're expecting another 2% cut in national insurance. Now, if the Tories win power again, that'll mean they will have halved national insurance from 12% to 6% in a calendar year. That's extraordinary, but no one's noticing. The problem is these are bold policies they're trying to push out there, but the world appears, or voters appear to have tuned out from the message, according to the polling. We know all about the national service idea, the triple lock plus on pensions, so they won't tax the state pension. Labour hasn't got an answer on that. And also on tax cuts, we're hearing that from the Tory party. Labour still in a mess about areas that they may be cutting or not on tax. They're only giving a guarantee not to increase some basic taxes. So they have got a message, but how can they get anyone to listen? And the hope is they can grab attention today.
All right, Chris, that's Chris Hope in Silverstone. We will, of course, bring you live as the manifesto is unveiled. I think it's about 80 pages.
Well, how long is that going to take him? Is he going to read it all out, do you think?
No, I think the Lib Dem manifesto was 170 pages.
Wow.
Too much. You just need about 14 bullet points, don't you?
Absolutely. Ian, this is a brilliant message, gbnews.com. Tax-cutting Tories, he said, you can't fatten a pig up on market day.
Good point.
My view is they're deliberately throwing this election, but they've gone too far. They're supposed to lose narrowly, however, they may never recover.
Because Ian's alluding to the fact clearly that we have the highest tax burden in this country since 1948. And I heard Mel Stride, the Work and Pension Secretary, doing the media round today, saying we're not putting up taxes. They are, because they've frozen the income tax thresholds, which till 2028, they've been frozen since 2022, which means more people every year will be taken into tax or higher tax. Having said that, Labour have no plans to lift the freeze.
Yeah.
So whoever wins, your taxes are going to go up, beyond no doubt whatsoever.
No sunny uplands on the horizon, I don't think, regardless of who wins. Now, 2 boys have become the youngest convicted murderers in Britain since the killing of James Bulger in 1993.
The 12-year-olds are found guilty of murdering a teenager with a machete in Wolverhampton in the part of the West Midlands region that has become the country's knife crime capital.
They stabbed 19-year-old Sean Sisahai in November in an unprovoked attack. With the significant risk these 2 boys pose to the public, should reporting restrictions be lifted and these boys be named?
Well, I can talk now to Hamish Brown, who is a former detective inspector at New Scotland Yard. Hamish, when you read some of the coverage of the court case, you're reminded that they are just children because they were allowed to play with fidget spinners during the proceedings. To occupy their minds as opposed to be listening to what was being said, because they are just children, but they've committed a heinous crime, and I would argue, Hamish, that perhaps they should be named, because would it perhaps act as a deterrent to other kids?
Well, of course, it would act as a deterrent, I think, with some people. And, of course, there's a public interest, should the public know. So we'll have to wait to see which way the judge goes. But I do feel, with this horrendous crime, a lot's been said about knife crime, I think the right messages have to go out, the education. And I mean, in the home, in the schools, in workplaces, clubs and things like that. Really hammer it home. And I think another measure, and I'm not comfortable with it, but it's those arches in schools, rather like when you go on a plane, security arches, just to see if it flashes up someone's got a knife. It's not a very nice thing to do. Schools shouldn't have to do that, but it's a positive measure, this target hardening. And the last area, I think, is the police, the involvement of police. And the public blow hot and cold on this, unfortunately, but the stop and search is absolutely essential. And without that, this undoubtedly will continue. And the police know what areas to look. They know the sort of people they're going to look at. And society, I think, has to come to terms with this and just acknowledge that's got to be the way forward. But there are 3 main ways forward, and perhaps they all apply, or perhaps just some of them. But positive action, better than we've got at the moment. Yes,
Hamish, one of the boys was apparently bragging about the fact that he is now known, he's got the distinction of being Britain's youngest knife killer, 12 years old and 73 days. If you name these kids, the risk is that they will wish to be famous. They all want to be famous. They don't care what they're famous for. And I think if we start naming them, we run the risk of glorifying them to some extent.
Yes, that's right, but I still think there's the public interest side, and of course these things do seep out through the World Wide Web, and we're powerless to stop that.
They were known to the police. They were known to the police, Hamish, and you'll have known in your time. You know these villains. You'll have known who they were. You'd have knocked on their doors 100 times. But what's happened in the decades ago? Somehow the local, it takes a village, the phrase, somehow the local elders would have swept them up. Somehow the granny of the neighbour or somebody would have got involved and kept an eye on them, or even given them a clip around the, around the ear hole to keep them in check. Now people are very scared of getting involved with other people's children. And if there's nobody there, how do we stop this? How do we encourage that social cohesion?
I couldn't agree with you more. I live in a village, population 12,000 people. It's 8 miles from a city, and we don't see the police here. Most of the CCTV's been taken down, and the use of and with respect to them, I'm sure they want to do a good job, but the use of PCSOs and not police officers, I find is most unsatisfactory. But we need people, certainly in uniform, and if it is the PCSOs, so be it, to be there. We don't see anyone down here. We have drugs and antisocial issues in this in this small town, which is still referred to as a village. But here I am in West Sussex, but I could be talking about anywhere in the country, and people, I'm quite sure, will agree with me. This social cohesion, we have to get the public involved, but we must have the police presence to go and sort things out. I mean, we have issues with shoplifters and what have you. The police know who they are, but they're not doing anything about it, and this can lead to all sorts of things.
Yeah.
So yes, better police-public relationships. The police to be yes, I know they've got a lot on their plate, but this is terribly important, and we might have to stop these dreadful crimes. Yeah.
Thank you, Hamish. Hamish Brown, MBE there, former Detective Inspector at New Scotland Yard. You know what? My mum was that person in our local community. People would just bring round their difficult teenagers and just go, Joyce, sort him out, and they'd just put them in the kitchen. And my mum would go, right, sit down. We're going to have a glass of orange juice. And she was that person. And even the local school would get her in, because she was a former police officer as well, a volunteer police officer. Where are those people now in the community? Because I think there's a fear because of health and safety.
And they'll be told to mind their own business, and there'll be safeguarding issues as well. This wretched word that creeps into everything.
Absolutely. She was head of safeguarding at our high school as well for 20 years, even after we'd left, because she wanted to stay involved in the local community. And we need those people to want... But who's got the time? Everyone's working 2 jobs. You know, she was lucky to be a full-time mum, so she could volunteer and help.
I think Sarah Vine's point earlier was very important when she said, actually, name the parents.
Name the parents. My worry with naming the parents... Well, name the parents now, maybe. What's going to happen? They're going to get people putting their windows through. They're going to get abuse from the local... It's just going to... And you might say, well, so what? But actually, that's only going to cause more for the police to do.
They shouldn't be having a comfortable time, should they?
I don't know. Well, let us know what you think at home. I think it's a really difficult issue, isn't it?
Should those kids be named?
/your say.
The time is now 10:17.
Right, still to come, Ocean's 24-style robbery. This real-life jewellery heist will leave you gobsmacked. Don't miss it. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mervyn Kirsch was a boy when the war began. By D-Day, he was trained and ready to fight after years waiting.
It was taking a long time. I suppose I was an agitator.
He remembers reality unfolding to the sound of thumping guns.
In the morning, about 5 o'clock, they woke me up to say we were going towards France now, and I could see the outline in the dawn. And I could hear couldn't see, but I could hear the shells, big shells going overhead both ways. Nobody was bothering to fire at me, which was quite good. Then I began to feel nervous, and I realised it's not just an adventure, it's actual world war.
Mervyn served in the Ordnance Regiment. His job was to get supplies like ammunition and vehicles onto the beach. When an advance party, including some of his friends, were destroyed, Mervyn stepped up.
The head of me went a reconnaissance unit. We were supposed to go on D+6. The reconnaissance unit was going D+2 to find a suitable site for 200 drivers and 1,000 vehicles, which we were going to stock, all kinds. They went across, but they didn't get across. They were torpedoes, the only boat torpedo that day. I was put on a boat that night, any boat, going across, and told to find a suitable site for vehicles and men. So I just crossed over, and I landed, got to the top of the cliff, and just with a strange driver in a tracked vehicle, told him just to drive down one of the roads and see what we can find.
The People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family. Welcome back. It's 10:21. Andrew, you're on the telly. Right, throughout the election campaign, we're going to be hearing from people across the United Kingdom about what really matters
Nigel
to you.
Nelson's fault.
We're not coming to you yet, Nigel. Hang on. Today we meet Sam Richardson from Falmouth.
I'm Sam Richardson, I'm 29 and I'm from Falmouth. So in Falmouth and Truro, the Labour Party have the best chance at getting the Tories out, so I'll be voting for the Labour Party this year. Well, I would consider myself to be centre, left of centre in my sort of politics. I feel like the last 14 years have been a bit of a disaster, to be honest. Food bank usage is up, there's a really bad housing crisis in Cornwall. Everywhere I seem to go, there seems to be shops closing down, the high streets are dying. And I just feel like most things have been really badly handled by the Conservative Party. So I think Keir Starmer's quite a serious man, which appeals to me. I think we need, especially at the moment, with the world in the state that it is, we need someone who can look at the books, make sure that the numbers add up. He's someone that I feel like, with his past as a human rights lawyer, I think that he's well suited to the role and well suited to the job at hand. I know that there's an argument that he's boring, but personally, I don't. What's wrong with boring? I yearn for the day where I don't wake up and worry about opening up my news app and seeing something ridiculous that the leader of the country has said. It doesn't have to be this soap opera all the time. I don't know that we should ever support one political party anyway. I think we should have our own political opinions and then err towards whoever best represents those. I think that's a much better way of doing it instead of pledging allegiance like a sports team. When you're 19, there's a lot of future left, right? So I would say that I've actually probably seen more politically engaged young people. Whether or not that's around economic or social issues, it seems to be more prevalent now than personally what I've seen for a long time, especially with things like the climate crisis.
Right, we are now with Nigel Nelson and Piers Pottinger in the studio. Where do you want to start this morning, fellas?
Let's talk about Wes Streeting.
OK.
Because he's turned the media around today. He had quite a difficult interview, I thought, earlier this morning, where he was asked a very straightforward question. Look, he'd already said Labour will not do what the Tories are doing. They're saying they're going to cut another 2p off national insurance. Fine. Then he was asked, would you prioritise spending on the NHS for tax cuts? Waffle, waffle, waffle. You can't ride both horses. It's one or t'other, Nigel.
Yeah, and I think spending on the... He's going to be the new health secretary, and it is spending on the NHS. I mean, there have been areas where they've got into some difficulties over this, over things like the 100,000 nursery places they're talking about. We're still waiting to hear some detail about where you find the 40,000 staff to make those nursery places work.
Yeah.
So I think we've got to that stage in the campaign where everyone sort of shoved their policies out there. They're now being looked at. But what we need now is the detail to find out exactly how to make them work.
And look, and we saw the row yesterday with Bridget Phillips and the Shadow Education Secretary, then Keir Starmer slapping down Emily Thornberry.
Yes.
Let the cat out the bag, didn't she, when she said, of course, state school class sizes will have to grow in the short term because of the VAT hike on private schools, which will go into force immediately. It's one of the first things they're going to do. And she was slapped. She was telling the truth.
Well, probably she made a mistake, in fact. Because
telling the truth?
No. In fact, it wasn't her brief, and so she was saying something that we don't know. I mean, I think if you take the tax on private school fees, we don't know what the result is going to be. And the evidence would show that money doesn't make a huge difference to parents sending their kids to private schools. So the original report, which is all based on, over the last 20 years, that the real terms increase in fees has been 55%, 7% of kids go to private schools. That hasn't changed in that time. So money doesn't seem to have been a major factor there.
But 20% overnight, that's a gradual increase of a few percent every year. 20% overnight is just not doable for various families across.
Well, the question is whether it's doable or not. I mean, the study was by the Institute of Fiscal Studies. That they were the ones who came up with the report all this is based on. Now, we don't know the result. It's about that non-dom tax. The non-dom tax won't work if everyone leaves. This tax won't work if all the parents withdraw their kids from private schools and they collapse. The evidence so far is that isn't going to happen.
Well, Nigel says that. Piers, we had a head teacher on today. We had one on yesterday, both from one in Gloucester, very multicultural city, one from I think it was Epsom yesterday, Ascot, both saying it's going to have a detrimental effect on school numbers because parents are indicating they'll have to take children out.
10%.
They already are.
Yeah.
And I mean, 2 private schools have already had to close. And of course, money matters. And this is just a spiteful and ridiculous socialist move for no reason at all other than spite. And it shows
and 1.5
what the Labour
billion.
Party are really like. And in fact, today, the biggest bombshell, which has gone unnoticed, is Dame Harriet Baldwin, who is the head of the Treasury Select Committee, who has pointed out in a brilliant piece in The Telegraph that Labour are basing their stealth tax increases on the IMF recommendations that are not widely known. And these include things like capital gains tax being put on selling your first residence.
Right.
Which would hit the housing market in an enormous way.
Really would.
Penalising drivers for putting a tax on them for driving at all. Based per mile, all kinds of stealth taxes. Yeah. These are the things the Labour Party do not want you to talk about. And also huge increases in capital gains tax, equating that to income tax, which would be a colossal rise. These are the taxes that Starmer does not want to be asked about. Yeah. And when asked, if you notice, when he was asked would he raise capital gains tax the other day, he refused more than once to answer the question.
I'm glad you raised that because The Guardian reported last week, and you'd have seen it, Nigel, that that Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, will bring in 10 to 12 tax rises in September, October, when she does her budget. And a lot of them around capital gains tax. It seems that Harriet Baldwin has put flesh on the bone and told us what they're going to be.
Yeah, but we
tax on you selling your first home, for God's sake.
Yeah, well,
get people on the property.
Well, first of all, as we speak here, that is not Labour policy.
Well, we'll see.
Yes, I'm sure there will be little things. I mean, what the Guardian was.
It's a big thing if you're selling your first home.
It is indeed, but there could be a number of smaller taxes where you get into a kind of big pot at the end of it. Labour are not going to raise the main taxes, VAT, income tax, and so on, as we know. We've heard about the tax rises on non-doms, the windfall tax on the oil giants, and the private schools tax. I think that we're getting to a stage now of trying to pretend we know what the other side is going to do.
But hang on, do you want to challenge you on this? Because you say they're not going to raise the taxes. They are going to raise income tax because they are not going to lift the freeze on.
Nor are the Tories.
Yes, but so we can't say Labour aren't going to raise tax because they are, and so are the Tories.
Yes, I mean, no one has changed that fundamental thing about thresholds. Thresholds stay till 2028.
Which means more and more people are going to pay tax.
Yeah, you're talking about 4 million people paying tax for the first time, 3 million will be paying more tax. Yeah. That's perfectly true. What we don't know is about these taxes, and I think that the important thing now, this is Manifesto week, what voters have to do is look at each manifesto and see which they think is the most realistic at the end of the week.
But always with Labour, you have to look at the wording, which they choose very carefully. Starmer talks about not taxing working people more. What he means by that is he's going to tax successful people who've got some money more, because the one thing the Labour Party cannot bear are successful people. That's who they want to penalise. And it's, again, pure spite.
Yeah,
nothing else.
The mask slips on this private school policy and the fact that they're so embedded with it. Can we just change the gear a little bit, gentlemen? Should we talk about these Italian thieves raiding?
Talk about raising money.
Stealing. Yeah.
Maybe that would be the Labour manifesto.
I wonder if Starmer was signing those.
I missed a trick there, didn't I? What's happened, Piers?
Yeah. Oh, Suez 11 instead of Ocean's 11 in Rome. It's a really straight out of Hollywood. A gang of thieves have broken in through the underneath Bulgari, which is a very expensive jewellery store in the Via Condotti, which is the smartest street in Rome, rather like Bond Street in London. And they broke in and stole all these jewels, and timing it to perfection, knowing the police would come. It took the police 7 minutes to get there and 4 minutes trying to get in because they'd barricaded the room, the entrance where they knew the police were coming. Meanwhile, they half-inched all the stuff they could and went back down under the sewers and escaped.
Amazing.
And I suspect people will now be looking for them by smell rather than...
Is there a film in this?
Well, I think it's straight out of a film.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, can I just point out that
They turned off all the CCTV cameras, which is why we have no footage of it.
Yeah, but the Hatton Garden robbers, who were all pensioners...
Yes, they were.
Yeah, but they stole £14 million. This lot only got away with €500,000.
I think they'd be disappointed with their take, quite frankly.
Frankly, that's probably just a bracelet in Bulgaria.
Well, obviously, if they had stuff of really, millions of dollars worth of jewellery, they'd put it in a safe.
Yeah.
These were all apparently still in display cases, which also tells you if you own a jewellery store in Rome, maybe take it out of the case at night and put it in a safe, like most sensible jewellers here.
Very good.
Right, Piers, Nigel, thank you so much. I want to show in the second half of the show amazing footage of a jeweller's in London being robbed and the police reaction to it. I'm going to try and dig that out for us as well. Don't go anywhere. First, though, the headlines with Sam Francis.
Just coming up to 10:32, the top stories from the newsroom, and I will start with some news just coming into us this morning that Gary Glitter has been ordered to pay more than £500,000 in damages to one of the women that he abused. That woman is suing the disgraced pop star whose real name is Paul Gadd, following his conviction in 2015 for abusing her and two other young people between 1975 and 1980. So that news just coming to us this morning that Gary Glitter has been ordered to pay more than £500,000 in damages to one of the women that he abused. And in other news this morning, the prospect of an imminent cut in the Bank of England's interest rate has been dealt a blow after the latest data shows that basic pay is still rising. Wages were up 6% in the first 3 months of the year. Figures from the Office for National Statistics also show unemployment rose slightly. The jobless rate is now nearly 4.5%, defying predictions that it would remain unchanged. The Conservative Party will launch its election manifesto later with a promise to cut national insurance by a further 2p. Labour says the money isn't there and that it wouldn't match that cut. The manifesto is also expected to include help for first home buyers, with changes to stamp duty and what's being called a new and improved Help to Buy scheme. Energy drinks containing large amounts of caffeine would be banned for young people under a plan by Labour. It would see children under the age of 16 blocked from purchasing drinks with more than 150 milligrams of caffeine per litre. The party says it's in response to an outcry from parents and teachers who are seeing the consequences of the unhealthy drinks. Studies show that high levels of caffeine among young people can cause increased blood pressure and sleep disturbances. And Elon Musk claims he'll ban Apple devices at his companies if artificial intelligence is integrated into operating systems. The iPhone's makers announced a big move to AI technology, starting with a partnership with OpenAI's ChatGPT. It'll be used to boost some of its apps and improve the Siri voice assistant as part of a suite of new features to be rolled out later this year. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Well, let's take a look at the markets for you this morning. The pound will buy you $1.2731 and €1.1841 euros. The price of gold is £1,205 and 8 pence per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 8,205 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Still to come this morning, find out the shocking reasons why the professional dancer Giovanni Pernice will not return to Strictly Come Dancing. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the M57 on Merseyside, 2 lanes are closed northbound after an accident between junctions 3 and 4 from Stockbridge Village to Knowsley, causing delays. And the A572 remains closed off the A49 at Newton-le-Willows after an accident last night. The M56 in Cheshire is partly blocked westbound between junctions 10 and 11 from Stretton to Preston Brook. In Lincolnshire, the A17 is blocked each way by an accident between Brant Broughton and Beckingham. In Norfolk, the A1065 is blocked by an accident at Castle Acre, and the A47 is partly blocked by an accident near to the Acle roundabout. In Herefordshire, the A4103 is blocked by an accident at Bishop's Froome. There are delays of up to an hour, with some cancelled trains through Basingstoke after a signalling problem. And on the M27 in Hampshire, there's a lane closed westbound where someone's broken down between junctions 9 and 8 from Fareham to Bursaldon, causing delays. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Mark Dolan Tonight. Weekends from 9 p.m.
England's new patron saint, Gary Lineker, a man holier and more virtuous than Mother Teresa and Gandhi combined, strikes again. Never one to miss the chance of some moral posturing, goal-hanging PR opportunist Lineker has spoken out about tonight's Champions League final. He tweeted the following: "This is the first time I'll be cheering for Real Madrid in a Champions League final." The German side Dortmund have signed a 3-year sponsorship deal with weapons manufacturer Rheinmetall. Now, Gary Lineker is not a stupid person. Following a stellar career on the pitch, it was a storied transition to broadcasting. And let me tell you, he's worth every penny of that £1.3 million a year of licence fee payers' cash to introduce football clips. So how did it escape the attention of this bright man that our democracies and our freedoms are protected and defended by the weapons produced like companies such as Rheinmetall? In fact, we should big up, not cancel, Rheinmetall, who have produced some of the armaments which are now helping Ukraine. Well, I'm very confused because I thought Gary Lineker was very supportive of Ukraine and their battle for survival. But now he wants to take their weapons away. I'm very, very confused. After all, they're going to need weapons with which to defend themselves. They can't fight by sending off tweets like Gary does. Now, many people love Gary Lineker. He has over 8 million followers on Twitter. This idol of the progressive left battled HMRC in court to reduce his tax bill by almost £5 million. This latest Lineker rant about war is weapons-grade nonsense. Sorry, Gary, but you're firing blanks.
The People's Channel.
Welcome back. So Giovanni Pernice will not return as a professional dancer for the next series of Strictly Come Dancing.
The BBC's launched an investigation into the Italian dancer because there's been a series of complaints from 3 contestants about his conduct.
So joining us now is showbiz reporter Stephanie Tecci. Stephanie, what's happened here? What's the background to this story? A lot of our viewers may not watch Strictly. It's unusual for a dancer that was doing well to be taken off the series completely.
Definitely. Giovanni was a much-loved dancer on Strictly. He's been on there for 9 series. You know, we saw him in 2021 when he helped Rose Ayling-Ellis win the Glitterball Trophy. That was the first deaf contestant to win it. Last year, he had actress Amanda Abington, and there was a lot of rumours, a lot of stories coming in the newspapers that they weren't getting on. She dropped out in week 9, and eventually in an interview she did, she said that she suffered post-traumatic stress from being on the show. She's now launched a lawsuit against the show, primarily Giovanni, saying that he was threatening towards towards her. He was quite abusive and abrasive. So this has, she's kind of struck a match. And then 2 other complainants who have been on the show have also said that he was also abusive towards him. Giovanni, of course, denies these claims, and he says, what's been taken as my passion and my ambition to see these celebrity dancers do well has been mistaken, and it's been claimed for abuse. And obviously we know with the BBC now, as with any reality show, there is that duty of care. So unfortunately for Giovanni, he's going to be missing this season, which is a shame because the 20th anniversary is going to be a monumental one, and he's very much loved by the viewers.
Post-traumatic stress, is that really what they're saying? Isn't that what soldiers who are on the front line in Afghanistan and Iraq and who were in Northern Ireland for years endure? So he was a tough taskmaster during rehearsals. Post-traumatic stress, is this not a little bit over-exaggerated, Stephanie?
Well, Andrew, in this day and age where a lot of people are sensitive about their mental health, and on these reality TV shows,
don't go on a reality show.
The strict. Well, they took the paycheck, so it's okay for doing the paycheck, but you have to earn your money when you're doing these strict rehearsals. And you know what? There is kind of like this backlash that is happening against Strictly, where a lot of these contestants, after they've taken the paycheck, Andrew, they'll be like, I found it quite difficult. It was tough on my mental health, dealing with the backlash from the public if they're not dancing properly. So, in this day and age where people are so sensitive, people are always going to find something wrong about these reality shows. And unfortunately for Giovanni, he has been the target, and even if he does clear his name, the damage has been done. How can you free yourself from all the abusive allegations? The problem is when they do invite these celebrities onto these reality shows, they're not actually doing thorough mental health checks to see what is their breaking point here. Because there's a majority of celebrities who do love Strictly Come Dancing, but for someone like Amanda Abbington, she clearly found it quite difficult and found the pressure too hard. And, if she does say she had post-traumatic stress, who are we to say she didn't have that?
OK, well, it's not a great line, Stephanie. It's funny.
He won it a couple of years ago.
He did win it. He won it with the deaf contestant.
Yeah, he did. And I saw that was Debbie, who used to be married to Paul Daniels, he was with her too. And I've talked to her about her time with Strictly. She said it's the best experience of her life since Paul died.
Amanda Abbington is no snowflake. The woman who's made that allegation says she's got PTSD.
Who is she? What's she?
She's an actress. You might know her face. She has done... No. She's done... I think she was on Sherlock.
She was married to the actor in Sherlock.
She's a very... she's one of these actresses that you may not know her name, but you would definitely know her face. And she's a bit of a chameleon. She's played blonde characters in shows, and then she was in Mr. Selfridge, she was in Sherlock, Crooked House, After You've Gone. Her partner that she adores and lives with, he was a stuntman who was in a wheelchair. Not long after they met, he was paralysed. She's a tough cookie.
She was married to Martin Freeman.
For her, she was. So for her to make this allegation, I think you have to take it quite seriously. BBC obviously are taking it seriously. There is an official investigation. If the police need to be involved, I'm sure they will be. And as you say, she's made the allegation, and then 2 other more women from the series have come forward to say they want to also make similar complaints. It's that fine line, isn't it, perhaps, where... At what point is robust coaching in that room crossing a line into being cruel?
He wants to win, and if he thinks they're slacking and not pulling their weight, he's going to be tough on them.
I think there's going to be more to come out from this, but...
He's denied any wrongdoing. He wrote this on social media: I reject any suggestion of abusive or threatening behaviour, and I look forward to clearing my name.
We'd love to hear what you think this morning. gbnews.com/your say. Up next, though, find out why 20 branches of Barclays banks were smashed up and sprayed with red paint, and what can be done to stop it happening again. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Bit of a chill out there today. It doesn't really feel like June. There'll be some June sunshine around. There'll also be a fair few showers around as well. Now, the breeze is coming down from the north, hence the chill. Quite a bit of cloud developing through the day, so it's not going to be sunny everywhere, but much of the west, Northern Ireland, Wales, southwest England, western Scotland staying dry and fine. And even further east, there'll be some sunny spells, but expect showers over parts of northern England, the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast. And even if you've got the sunshine, it isn't warm. Temperatures struggling into the mid-teens for many, feeling cooler with that wind, particularly on some of these North Sea coasts. That breeze will continue to bring a few showers around. So for this evening, yes, plenty of showers across East Anglia and the southeast, but for much of southwest England, Wales, it'll be a fine evening. Not very pleasant for sitting out in because temperatures will be dropping pretty sharply once the sun has set. But a fine day by and large for Northern Ireland, and in fact most of Scotland will be dry through the evening. Just the odd shower coming in, but still a significant chill, particularly over the Northern Isles. Temperatures here quickly dropping back down to single figures and feeling cooler with that wind, which will continue to blow through Tuesday evening. The showers, though, well, they should tend to fade away. So many places becoming dry as we go through tonight. So we'll always keep some showers coming into the Northern Isles. We'll keep quite a bit of cloud in some places, but where we have the clear skies, it is going to turn quite chilly again. Temperatures well down into single figures in some rural spots. So another fresh day on Wednesday. The winds, though, won't be as strong on Wednesday, and there won't be as many showers either. Yes, still a sprinkling over eastern England and northeastern Scotland, but I suspect many areas will be dry as we go through tomorrow. Some cloud, but a bit more in the way of sunshine. Those lighter winds as well. Temperatures still below par for this time of year, but it'll probably feel just a touch warmer tomorrow. Goodbye.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians and the media, but it's actually about you. We won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear all sides
as you make your decision in the run-up to polling day.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel. Britain's election channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, what do you think? We want to hear what you think. You can send your views, your opinions. You can text us or you'll post your comments by visiting gbnews.com/you'll say.
You can send us abuse.
You can.
You can send us nice things.
We don't mind if you send us abuse. Or even
you can't send us
constructive
pictures,
criticism.
luckily enough.
Yeah. No, exactly. Well, someone says don't encourage abuse. I get plenty anyway. So not a day goes by without some abuse. That's part of the job.
Right, what have you been talking about? You are saying Ella said, for heaven's sake, she's a snowflake, Bev. This is about Amanda Abington. She couldn't handle a perfectionist. She decided to ruin his career.
Sort of feel a bit like that, I'm
The persecution of males continues. How does Bev know that Amanda Abington isn't a snowflake? That doesn't make sense. I've seen I know her a little bit. I don't mind in transparency. I've had some interactions with Amanda Abington. I've always found her to be. She's just not a snowflake.
But post-traumatic stress? What soldiers endure? Been on the front line? Having been shot at by the Taliban and...
It does seem like a strange use of that phrase.
Well,
I guess what I would say is I suppose the pressure cooker of Strictly is in itself intense.
But that's why they get paid so much
They
money.
don't get paid that much money to do Strictly anymore.
Over £100,000 is a lot of money.
I don't think it is that much, is it?
I think it is.
Have they asked you to do it? Is that what they offered you to do, Strictly?
No. And who was... I'm trying to think who's got the most money in Strictly.
Don't know.
No.
I think they have a flat fee. My ex-husband did it, remember?
Yeah.
They do a...
What did he get?
I don't know. It was after the divorce, otherwise I would have found out. It's a flat fee, but then if you stay in after so many weeks, then you get extra per week.
I think if you get to the final...
He was out in week one.
Oh, was he?
I could have told him that was going to happen.
2 left feet.
Yeah. To be honest, sportsmen aren't terribly good dancers. I can't lie, particularly
there was
rowers.
one cricketer who did well in it a few years ago. I've forgotten his name.
Don't know. Right.
I think he won it.
And Matt Dawson won it, the rugby player, actually. OK, gbnews.com/your say to send us your messages. Now, pro-Palestinian activists have vandalised 20 branches of Barclays across England and Scotland.
Why? They sprayed red paint through rocks and smashed windows across London, Bristol and Edinburgh.
They're demanding that the company distance itself from Israel's weapons trade and fossil fuels. City of London police said 3 men aged between 34 and 45 have been arrested in connection with criminal damage at the Barclays on Moorgate yesterday.
Well, let's talk now to the government's advisor on political violence and disruption, Lord Warney. Lord Warney, we all support the right to protest and demonstrate. This is just mindless vandalism.
Yeah, it's criminal sabotage, and it is very deliberate in its attempts to try to for these people to force their way into the conversation and to effectively intimidate the public and elected governments into doing what they want. It's totally unacceptable, and we need to be able to push back against it and do more, I think, to deter this kind of thing happening.
How do you deter it?
Well, you look at what is happening, and clearly the activists at the moment are not being deterred by the threat of being arrested and being taken to court for their vandalism. And you can look at the problems with the criminal justice system, the fact that it often takes very long to get people to trial, and sometimes charges can be dropped. But what I'm recommending to the government, it's one of the recommendations in the review into political violence that was published just before the election was called, is to do more to restrict the activities of groups like this Palestine Action Group that choose to use law breaking as a core tactic to try to change people's minds, to do more to stop them being able to advertise freely on social media, to raise money as they can now. I mean, it is absurd that we have this situation that actually this group are, actively advertising what they do, having training sessions, which is quite open that they are training people to break the law, and then have been live tweeting from the scene of their criminal sabotage in the past and asking people to join them. That shouldn't be acceptable. And I think the government can do more to be able to crack down on those kind of activities.
But that should be presumably a new law that covers maybe the use of live broadcasting a crime. Is there anything in the statute book at the moment that would cover that?
No. Well, what I think we should be able to do is to say that organisations that are clearly and very deliberately breaking the law to change to be able to try to change people's minds, is that they shouldn't be able to operate freely as organisations. And you look at terrorist prescription in this country. And that has been effective in banning an organisation. It's not perfect, but it is really effective in cracking down on their activities. And I think you can use that model. These people, I'm not suggesting necessarily that they are terrorists. You wouldn't be labelling them as terrorists, but you'd be using that model of restricting the capacity of an organisation to operate and applying it to these types of organisations that routinely break the law to get what they want.
It's just mindless violence and vandalism against these properties, isn't it? These men, 3 men who've been arrested, what hopes do you have that they will be served the correct penalty and sentencing?
Well,
I'd chuck them...
Well, I'd also make them clear up the mess. I'd make them clear up the mess, Lord Warney. I'd make them scrub the red paint off those walls in high-vis jackets, and then I'd give them a criminal sentence.
I won't comment on anyone who has been arrested, individuals who've been arrested, but I mean, clearly the system is not working to properly deter people. I think restorative justice is important. I think something to understand about the way that groups like this and activists operate is, actually, I understand why we use the term mindless violence. It's not mindless, actually. People are deliberately doing this because they think it's going to be effective. And so we need to do more to be able to show that actually, if you are going to intimidate people, break the law, commit these acts of sabotage, you're not going to get your way.
Thank you, Lord Walnick. The clock is against us, I'm afraid. Thank you so much. Good to see you. And when I said mindless, I realised it was the wrong word. But what I mean is, it's not going to make any difference. Not going to make any difference to the war in the Middle East, idiots. Right, here's the weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Bit of a chill out there today. It doesn't really feel like June. There'll be some June sunshine around. There'll also be a fair few showers around as well. Now, the breeze is coming down from the north, hence the chill. Quite a bit of cloud developing through the day, so it's not going to be sunny everywhere, but much of the west, Northern Ireland, Wales, southwest England, western Scotland staying dry and fine. And even further east, there'll be some sunny spells, but expect showers over parts of northern England, the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast. And even if you've got the sunshine, it isn't warm. Temperatures struggling into the mid-teens for many, feeling cooler with that wind, particularly on some of these North Sea coasts. That breeze will continue to bring a few showers around. So for this evening, yes, plenty of showers across East Anglia and the southeast, but for much of southwest England, Wales, it'll be a fine evening. Not very pleasant for sitting out in because temperatures will be dropping pretty sharply once the sun has set. But a fine day by and large for Northern Ireland, and in fact most of Scotland will be dry through the evening. Just the odd shower coming in, but still a significant chill, particularly over the Northern Isles. Temperatures here quickly dropping back down to single figures and feeling cooler with that wind, which will continue to blow through Tuesday evening. The showers, though, well, they should tend to fade away. So many places becoming dry as we go through tonight. So we'll always keep some showers coming into the Northern Isles. We'll keep quite a bit of cloud in some places, but where we have the clear skies, it is going to turn quite chilly again. Temperatures well down into single figures in some rural spots. So another fresh day on Wednesday. The winds, though, won't be as strong on Wednesday, and there won't be as many showers either. Yes, still a sprinkling over eastern England and northeastern Scotland, but I suspect many areas will be dry as we go through tomorrow. Some cloud, but a bit more in the way of sunshine. There's lighter winds as well. Temperatures still below par for this time of year, but it'll probably feel just a touch warmer tomorrow. Goodbye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's our summer spectacular. 3 top prizes that have to be won. There's cash. £15,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like this summer. Plus a brand new iPhone 15 with a set of Apple AirPods. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also treat you to some fun in the sun with £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction this summer. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Mark Dolan, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
As time passes,
She could have saved Storm.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
And it's 11 a.m. on Tuesday, the 11th of June. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
So, lawless Britain, 2 12-year-old boys have become the youngest knife killers in the UK after killing a teenager with a machete in Wolverhampton. Would you want these killers to be named?
Tax-cutting Tories. The Prime Minister will put tax cuts at the heart of the Tory Party Manifesto, which is being launched shortly. We'll bring that to you as it happens.
And Labour want to look after you. They've launched their health plan for children this morning.
And the Lib Dems launching their rural GP fund and promise that all patients will be seen by a doctor within 7 days. Olivia Rutley has more.
Yes, the Lib Dems are trying to be the left-wing party of opposition while Keir Starmer takes the centre ground. But how are they doing in the polls? Find out more with me very soon.
So Rishi Sunak is currently, filling up the tank with petrol, changing the tyres. He's at Silverstone to launch the Tory Manifesto today. What do you think he's doing? Putting his helmet on?
Are they in reverse gear, first gear, say all the puns?
I hope he's got his fireproof outfit on, I can tell you that, because no doubt the press will be a bit unkind to him tomorrow morning. I don't know what he's going to add to this manifesto. We don't already know.
There are rumours that in addition to the cut in national insurance, there could be something, a pledge on income tax. That would be really interesting.
But what can he possibly say? In fact, let me ask you, what can he say?
A cut in income tax.
That would win your vote. But is that enough? You can't see your GP, there's potholes in the roads, nothing works, the trains are dirty, nothing's on time. What can he offer you?
It'd be clear blue water with Labour, because Labour have already said they won't cut national insurance like the Tories will.
Yeah.
It's an income tax cut as well. Big gap between the two parties.
Yeah. It looks like there is a little bit of difference, like you say. Well, you think it's a big gap. I guess
It will be a huge gap if they cut tax as well.
it would be.
If they cut it, because you can promise it, but will you deliver it? Remember, Boris Johnson said there'd be a lock on national insurance, VAT and income tax. You put up national insurance.
gbnews.com/your say to tell us your thoughts this morning. First, though, with the very latest news, Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you. It's just coming up to 3 minutes past 11. And as we've been hearing, the top story today, Rishi Sunak is expected to announce a further 2p cut in national insurance when he outlines the Conservatives' election manifesto in around half an hour's time. The manifesto is also expected to include help for first-time home buyers, with changes to stamp duty and what's been called a new and improved Help to Buy scheme. It comes after Rishi Sunak dismissed rumours that he was considering resigning following the fallout from his decision to leave a D-Day event early. Work and Pensions Secretary Mel Stride told us this morning that there are big and bold promises to come.
It's a binary choice between ourselves as a party which now is seeing the highest joint level of growth in the G7. We've got inflation down to near normal levels. We've got rising real wages, which has been going on now for 11 consecutive months. And we're now going to be delivering some pretty big tax cuts. We've already cut taxes for 29 million working people, worth £900 for an average earner. We're going to go further in our manifesto.
But responding to those plans from the Conservative Party, the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, says the Tories' plan doesn't make economic sense and that he wouldn't match the national insurance cut.
Money's not there for the Tories' desperation. And what they're producing is a recipe for 5 more years of chaos. And I think that's why it's so important that we see this election as a choice, because we can't go on like this. We need to turn the page, rebuild, start with Labour. We've got 6 first steps that are ready to go on July the 5th, get on with the job, roll our sleeves up. So that's the choice before the country now.
Well, away from the election trail, the rate of unemployment is at the highest level for more than 2 years after it unexpectedly jumped in April. Figures from the Office for National Statistics out this morning show the jobless rate is nearly 4.5%, defying predictions that it would remain unchanged. Job vacancies also saw another sharp drop, the 23rd fall in a row. And there was some good news, with inflation dropping to its lowest level since 2021, though economists had expected a bigger drop. TV chef Jamie Oliver says that a ban on the sale of energy drinks to young people would be a welcome relief for parents and teachers. Labour's plan would see children under the age of 16 blocked from purchasing drinks with more than 150 milligrams of caffeine per litre. Studies show that high levels of caffeine among young people can cause sleep disturbances as well as behavioural and mental health problems. Well, Jamie Oliver says previous governments have failed to put the health of children in their manifestos.
Child health hasn't been put central to any manifesto in the last 20 years, ever. You've never seen it on a bus with a number. You've never seen it important, right? So this is really exciting for me. It means they're looking at the detail. It means they're looking at the science. It means they're looking at supporting kids and families, especially the ones that are struggling. It means they're looking at supporting teachers. It means they're looking at supporting better outcomes in schools and then, therefore, health. So this is exciting for me. It means they're getting into the detail. And then the question is, what next?
Gary Glitter has been ordered to pay more than £500,000 in damages to one of the women he abused. The woman, who can't be named, is suing the disgraced pop star, whose real name is Paul Gadd, following his conviction in 2015 for abusing her and 2 other young people between 1975 and 1980. He was briefly released in February last year before being sent back to prison. That was after attempting to access images of children on the dark web. Overseas, the Hamas terror group has now accepted a ceasefire proposal that was passed by the United Nations last night. The UN Security Council backed the 3-phase plan, which includes the release of hostages and the withdrawal of Israeli forces. A senior member of Hamas says the group will accept the deal and is now ready to begin negotiations over those details. And finally, stick with us is the message to England fans from the squad ahead of Euro 2024. England's preparations for the tournament ramp up today after Gareth Southgate's side landed in Germany last night. Defeat to Iceland in their final friendly saw them booed off at Wembley last week, and they face Serbia in their tournament opener on Sunday. That's the latest from the newsroom for now. Your next update at 11:30. Until then, you can sign up to GB News Alerts. Just scan the code on your screen or go to our website, gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back. We're going to show you some unbelievable footage of Joe Biden in just a moment. I mean, it's getting cruel now, wheeling that man out on stage. You don't want to miss this. But first of all, let's have a look at what you have been saying at home. Sorry, just loading. We like the system, but it does have a... You know what, while this is loading, let's have a look at this footage.
Yeah, this is Joe Biden, the President of the United States, the most powerful man in the world, running for office again in a few months' time. Look at this.
So, he's at an event, clearly a music festival. Everybody around him, dancing.
Next to the Vice President, Kamala Harris.
Bopping.
Quite a good mover.
And he doesn't move at all. He looks like he doesn't even know where he is. He's completely static. If you're listening on the radio, lots of people around him, and you can see the gentleman to his left, who clearly wants to be dancing to the music, is awkwardly sort of clapping, and then he puts his arm around Joe Biden, talks to him to basically give the guy an excuse to not be dancing.
And Biden has this fixed grin on his face because he doesn't know what to do, but he knows he's got to smile. He looks a bit like a waxwork dummy in Madame Tussauds.
It's just awful. awful. Here's my suspicion. I don't think he will stand. I think at the very last minute, they will pull him from the ticket. They will say his health is not up to it. And they will put somebody else in at that last moment, perhaps Michelle Obama.
Well, she's already said she wouldn't do it. But
yeah, but she doesn't want to do the campaigning. She doesn't have to do it now. The boring bit is the campaigning. She doesn't have to do any of that. She can just wait in the wings, let him make her
the person who would make a
idiot
difference
himself.
here is the First Lady. If she said, darling, you've got to give up, would he listen? Because I think otherwise they're going to have to take him out with the men in the white coats.
I have no doubt that whoever his handlers are, they are having that conversation with her about how to play this strategy, because they will keep him there, and especially if Trump ultimately does end up running for the Republicans, then
he will.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm sure he will, but I think that's not a done deal. Yes, I'm sure he will. But then what? Who do they put against Trump at the very last minute to scupper his plans? Anyway.
Fascinating.
Right, 2 boys have become the youngest convicted murderers in Britain since the killing of Jamie Bulger in 1993.
The 12-year-olds were found guilty of murdering a teenager with a machete in Wolverhampton last year.
They stabbed 19-year-old Sean Sisahai in November in an unprovoked attack. In a text exchange, the boys said...
This is what's awful. Everyone's talking about it. Literally everyone. Everyone knows.
To which the other boy replied in a voice message, "It is what it is."
And then the first boy wrote back, "Everyone knows what happened. I'm scared, man."
And this could be the most chilling bit, I think, the second boy replied, "I'm not," and said IDRC, which is basically a way of saying, I don't really care.
And because he, of course, in particular, seems to be revelling in the notoriety. Joining us now is a social justice campaigner and no stranger to this programme, Winston Davies. Winston, good morning to you. Have we got Winston? Here he is. There's Winston. Morning to you, Winston. Winston, the obvious question is how on earth do these boys get access to this terrible weapon? But also, what's gone terribly wrong in their homes that they're posting photographs with this machete at 1:30 a.m. in the morning and they randomly pick on someone and murder him, almost for fun?
I mean, yeah, obviously, very, very sad case. These boys, and first to go back to the, should we be naming them as the killers? Is it in the public's interest? I'm not sure about that. I do think that the wider conversation, as you've just said, about what's going on in their homes, actually is further than that. It's actually more about, firstly, how are they getting access to these knives?
Yeah.
And how much of an impact has social media and music had on these young boys, 12 years old, to the point where they think that only one of these knives is cool, as they said in their statements, and that posing with them, to make them look good. They're the questions that we need to be asking. I mean, there are people that are doing a lot of work to try and get these knives off of the streets, and that's what the focus should be on a practical level, like immediately. But the sale of these... Sorry, go on.
Well, I was going to say, for me, Winston, it's not about the knife. It could be a machete knife. It could be just a knife that they get from the kitchen if they've got that sort of murderous intent and the complete lack of empathy for another human being. These boys are operating within some sort of moral vacuum. There's no judgment in their life. No one has called them to task. You must meet little scallies like this all the time, Winston. What could save them from a life of crime?
So I think that, look, the boys 100%, what they've done is, disgusting, murdering someone, the crime they've committed is shocking, but they are still boys, and there are many thousands of boys that are, like this, on the verge of being like this, that are carrying knives to look cool, for protection, or for whatever it is. And actually, in the charity that I'm chair of, Southside Young Leaders Academy, we focus on early intervention. So actually, at 12, 13 years old, we're finding that the drop-off rate in the boys that come to us is massive from 12, 13 years old. We're finding that when we're getting boys at 8 years old and we're able to keep them for 3 or 4 years and instill in them a sense of identity, they talk about this moral compass, and actually get hold of them early, that's the key to it. And at 12 years old, they're on the path. We go from 12 years old, maybe they haven't stabbed someone, but they might get expelled from school. And as soon as they go expelled from school, they're on that path there to criminality and potentially prison in the future.
What would you say, Winston? Because there is a debate. We're having this debate here on the programme. Should these boys be named? They're children. Of course, they're children. They're 12. But what they've done is heinous and monstrous. And a lot of people say we have a right to know who they are and who their families are and why they're in this position in the first place.
So we looked at the exchange just now on the text messages there from them. One of them clearly is like a leader within this, although they've been done on joint enterprise. One of them is the leader in this, and you can see that he's morally bankrupt.
Yeah.
But then there's the other one in this who actually is scared and thinking about what's happened, and he's showing remorse even in behind the closed doors. So then to name both of them, you're exposing one of them that might have a chance in 10, 15 years time to try and turn his life around and try and do something else, cutting that chance away, and then just creating another person that's going to be there that is going to come out. And like the Bulger killers, one of them seems to have turned it around and gone off the radar, and the other one continuing to commit crime and being a danger to our public.
There's no excuse for this sort of murderous criminality, Winston. But these boys would have been 8 and 7 when they were locked at home, when they couldn't go to school. They've had 2 fundamental, influential years in their life where there was no sport, no teachers, no social workers, no wraparound care, no support. And what impact has that lockdown period had on this generation?
So exactly what we just said. You said social media. So they're getting their learning not from school, they're getting it from TikTok and Instagram and all of the influences that make it normalised to not care about life. There needs to be greater regulation on kids' access to social media. They say there's an age limit to it, but as soon as they've got a smartphone, that's it. They're locked in and they're watching it, whether they're posting stuff or not. They're on it. Yeah. And that there needs to be regulated. It's like you can't just let children, they said 8, 9 years old, watch people getting their heads chopped off and people, all mad stuff that you see online. Yeah. Whether it be violence or sex or whatever it may be, all of it is going towards dehumanizing and desensitizing these young people. That's what we need to get a grip on.
And and that's the point, isn't it? These kids have access to things that I'd never even heard of when I was their age, but they can see stuff that is not meant for children's minds because their minds aren't big enough and broad enough to contend and to tell the difference between right and wrong.
Well, the fact is that their minds haven't even developed. We know that with young men, the prefrontal cortex of your brain doesn't even fully develop to you in mid-20s. So by giving it to children at 8 or 9, their brains literally, the neural pathways in their brains literally haven't even developed properly. So 100%, that's got to be stopped. And actually, an education back to parents that, giving your kid a phone, I know it's convenient to give children a phone and to give them a smart device, it keeps them quiet. But how the dangers and the damage that it can cause going forward, and not just actually in terms of extreme circumstances like this, but in terms of normal life, interacting with other people and other young people, to do your studies, to have focus, to have drive, to have an actual an expanded attention span. These things are being deprived of our children, even if they're not out committing crime. What's that saying for the next generation?
Winston, the front page of the papers this morning as well, some of the England footballers going out to the Euros. Amazing young black guys who've done really well, amazing role models for these kids. And yet we've got a problem with young black men glamorising knives, rape, drugs through the music industry, which is so powerful. Unless you've got teenagers, I don't think you realise how influential this cultural depravity, and I don't use that word lightly, it is depraved. Some of the things that these people are talking about. Why are there not more black commentators talking about how problematic that is?
So 2 things here, Bev, right? Firstly, it's definitely not just a black boys problem. This drill music, this street culture, it's not just affecting young black boys. If you go up to Liverpool, you go up to Manchester or other areas where there is poverty and depravity of predominantly white areas, you'll see a lot more white boys that are behaving in this way as well. And
they're looking up to these black guys, they're looking up to the black rappers and the singers, and a lot of them are American, some of them are based here as well. The perpetrators of the creators of this music are black.
Well, again, you'll have to look back at the history of where this music's come from and who's been funding it. and who's been orchestrating it. And actually goes back to the thing you said about why are we not seeing more positive black role models in the news and media. Well, who controls the media? Who allows these headlines to go out? Last week, we had a classic example of it. England lost against Iceland at the football. Saka was on the pitch for 25 minutes, and yet he gets all of the back pages saying how bad England played and how bad it is. Someone's controlling that narrative to put him on the back page.
Winston, you're not suggesting that the people who write those sports stories are picking on him because he's black?
Listen, you can do it for your own interpretation. Listen, you take it for your own interpretation. I'm saying to you, there were 15 other players, 14 other players that played on that pitch. He played for 25 minutes, yet he took up the central back pages of 2 or 3 of the main newspapers. Why was that?
But perhaps he played really badly.
And he was a contribution to the whole of that game for 25 minutes.
Well, I've worked in news for years. I don't accept that there's any endemic racism on sports desk. I just don't buy that. I think that's too extreme a view. I don't know anything about the football match either, so I'm struggling here.
I think it's a stretch.
No, I know,
Yeah.
but Bev's making a point, and I'm just trying to come back to you and understand that there are people that control the narrative. So look, there are people out there, young black guys out there that are doing great positive things, but it doesn't make for good news. You know, I'll give you a whole list of people that are doing great things, but it's not making for good news.
Do you know what I want on the front page?
And
Winston, do you know what I want on the front page of the papers? I want these drill artists and these rappers to be criticised in the press, and they never are. And they aren't on mainstream media. Mainstream media is not touching these guys. It's all over social media where they have a free rein to perpetrate violence, misogyny, rape, drugs, criminality. And that's what our children are absorbing.
Let me give you one example, right? There's a guy called Farron Paul, right? He runs a page and a charity called Phase Amnesty. His main focus, he was a victim of knife crime. His main focus is going out, educating young people, taking knives and weapons off of the streets. He doesn't get funding. He goes around doing it off his own back. He's got a good following on social media. I've never seen him in mainstream papers. I've never seen him on a mainstream news channel, and he's doing work for years, and he's changing life, physically taking the zombie knives, going into police stations with him. But no one's going to him and backing him and giving him funding or giving him highlighting the good work he's doing. And there's so many other people that are doing that. You know, there's a guy, Sage Holm, who's down in South London. He's doing the same thing. He runs a charity called Mentivity, again, trying to change the narrative of young black boys in and around South London.
Good. And we applaud those people. And Winston, that is specifically why I wanted you on the show this morning in our meeting. I said we need somebody that works with these kids who is a positive young male black role model who is doing great work, and we really appreciate you coming on this morning. Social justice campaigner Winston Davis.
Thank you, Simon.
Thanks.
Good to talk to you. Still to come. We're on the countdown till Rishi Sunak launches that Tory party manifesto. I bet you're waiting with bated breath. You're at Britain's Newsroom on GB News. It's good.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but it's actually about you.
And we won't ever forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
Now more than ever, it's important to hear
all sides as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
The Princess of Wales has reportedly been out and about, enjoying days out with her family, while she continues to undergo her treatment for cancer.
And Buckingham Palace says they have been inundated with tens of thousands of get well soon cards and gifts for the princess.
Yes, I can imagine so. Now we're joined by former royal correspondent at The Sun, Charles Ray. Charles, how do they know she's been out and about with her family?
Good afternoon, Tom and Emily. It's interesting, yes. I mean, how do they know that she's been out and about? No pictures have been seen of the princess out and about. And I'm surprised that with all the people who've got camera phones, that she has been that out and about, that we haven't seen her. But anyway, we have to accept that she is out and about. She's with her family. But the palace are making it quite clear, pointing out that this should not be confused with her returning to work anytime soon. There are even some suggestions that she won't return to work probably until the autumn, and there's one suggestion that may not even be till next year. Like her father-in-law, she's not sitting at home with her feet up watching daytime TV. She is actually working. She's actually doing things.
And yet, this is a difficult time, of course, for the royal family to navigate everything. The King has cancer, the Princess of Wales has cancer, and we're in the middle of a general election campaign where the royal family have to be very, very careful about where they go, what they do and what they say.
Sure. And as you quite rightly say, Tom, I mean, things have had to be cancelled in any case. So during this next 6 weeks, we are not going to be seeing any members of the royal family doing as much as they possibly can or can do prior to a general election.
The People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
11:25, we're going straight to say listen to Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, who's in the northwest.
Just wait 1 second, mate.
Oh, we thought he was in the northwest. Yeah. Told to throw straight to Keir Starmer. He's actually in the northeast, not the northwest either.
We have been absolutely clear that all our plans are fully costed, fully funded. We will not be increasing income tax, national insurance or VAT, so no tax increases for working people. None of our plans require tax rises. But this is coming from the party that's put tax to the highest level since, for 70 years. And they're building this sort of Jeremy Corbyn-style manifesto where anything you want can go in it. None of it is costed. It's a recipe for more of the same, and that's why this choice of turn our back on this, turn the page and rebuild with Labour is so important. We've got 6 first steps. We're ready to go on July the 5th.
Here's Pottinger's back with us in 1909. And Jeremy Corbyn, he's got a bit of a cheap mentioning him when he served in that terrible Marxist shadow cabinet for 3 years.
And he did say Jeremy Corbyn would make a great Prime Minister.
He did.
Something he's never rescinded.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm afraid that this manifesto coming up, I can't think of another election in my lifetime where a manifesto has meant so little, because it's too little, too late, and no matter what he says, and I'm sure we're going to get some great promises about tax cuts now.
That's what I think.
But it's too late. And of course, the real villain of the piece is Jeremy Hunt, who's been completely invisible in this campaign, because he's so concerned, as usual, about his own future. He spends the whole time in his own constituency pretending he's a good constituency guy because he's desperate to save his own neck.
And he won't.
And he hasn't done all the things that he could have done because he wanted to seem prudent Chancellor, thinking of the future and the big ticket jobs he's going to land having been a Chancellor. And I think he is the real villain of the Tory party, and also, of course, an avid Remainer who would love to, like Starmer, get closer to Brussels and the EU, although last weekend we saw the EU change dramatically to the right, and that might not make Starmer's future intentions quite as easy as he thinks.
And I think there is a chance in the manifesto, in addition to the national insurance cut, we already know about they're going to promise, that they might promise an income tax cut. Is Piers right, it's too late?
I'd be very surprised if they did promise an income tax cut. So, I think the national insurance is the one that we're expecting at the moment.
Yeah.
An income tax cut, it's a question of however would you afford it.
Right.
If they were doing something with tax thresholds, that's the key.
That would be really important.
That would be a really big one, to actually reset the date of 2028 before the freeze ends, or just bring it forward. Something like that would make a major contribution. But at the moment, all the Tory MPs that I've talked to on the front line, they're not even mentioning Sunak, they're not mentioning the Tory party. They're trying to win their seats based on them and saying, look, I'm your representative up in Westminster and doing it that way.
But incumbency's worth, well, how many? A few
I know.
votes.
I mean, it's a personal vote type of plea, and we all know personal votes don't really count for that much. But equally, they feel that they're being tarred by a very dodgy brush from Rishi Sunak. And so they're just trying to ignore him.
What did you make, Piers, of Suella Braverman saying that the Conservatives should welcome Nigel Farage into the party?
Well, I think that when she said it, and before Nigel made his D-Day mistake...
Just explain what you mean by that.
Well, I mean that when Nigel said that Rishi was out of touch with our culture, that was going a bit too far, because he may have been out of touch with the electorate in some ways, but it did sound a little bit racist to me, and Nigel has been on the up, and I'm afraid he's now on the way down. And there were a lot of people I knew who were on the cusp of voting reform and voting for him. But when he made that remark about culture, and that Rishi doesn't understand our culture, I'm afraid that, I think, has cost him some
I wonder
real
if you should see the front page of the Telegraph here, because they've put on the front page Nigel Farage, and the photograph, I don't know if we can focus in on this front page.
It's not flattering.
It's the least flattering photograph they can find.
Well, I think
I wonder if that's a sign the Telegraph
I think it's his...
had flirted with Farage, and now the flirtation's over.
I think Nigel is a terrific man in many ways. He was doing a terrific job, and there was no doubt that reform had huge momentum. But I think with the demographic profile of the people he was winning over, many of them, and I know several people who've told me this personally, that they're put off by when he went just that bit too far, attacking...
I think that's absolutely right, that to start talking about... It's very dog whistle. You start talking about Rishi Sunak doesn't understand our culture, as if the Prime Minister comes from a completely different culture.
He was born in Southampton.
When he's born in Southampton, went to a major public school in this country. The one thing he is part of our culture. So to separate that, I think is a bit dodgy.
I want to defend... I totally know what you mean, but I want to defend this a little bit. If I say Rishi Sunak is not part of our culture, what I mean is he is a globalist. He's one of those families that doesn't live anywhere. He will not live out his days in this country. He's got his house in California that he'll go to. His children will be schooled all over the world. He's your ultimate technocrat. In that regard, I don't think he does share our culture. I think Nigel's talking about him in that regard, not as necessarily that he's not British born.
Well, if he was talking about him in that way, he didn't make it sound like it, and he should have made that clear. Because I think most people took it a different way. And I think when the polling comes out, it'll show reform having peaked a little bit too early in this campaign.
Although latest polling showing that Nigel's more popular than Rishi Sunak with the public.
Well, that would be after D-Day.
That was after D-Day, and I'm sure that is the case.
What did you think of that, Piers? I was interested to know your opinion on that.
Well, it's extraordinary, because Rishi was at school at Winchester, where I was, and in Winchester College there is a place called War Cloisters, which you walk through every day to go to the classrooms. And when you walk through it, because it has all the names of the former pupils who died in the 2 world wars inscribed on the walls of the cloisters, when you walk through it, you nod your head, you bow your head in commemoration.
Gosh.
And you do that every time you walk through. So as a boy, it's instilled in you the memory of wartime. And so I think what Rishi did... it was unforgivable. It was a catastrophic moment for him. It is what has undoubtedly cost him even more seats than he's going to lose. And it was something that, whatever the apology, it doesn't work. And I think the real problem is the people advising him, surrounding him, are clearly not up to the game, because this is the worst Conservative election campaign I have ever seen, by a mile.
And you've advised on a few of them.
I want to defend him a little bit on that, Nigel, because he would say, I was there for the main ceremony, the veterans had all left, King Charles was still there, William was still there, Prince Wales was still there. I have a country to run and a manifesto to prepare that we're launching today. I made an early exit, but I defend my right to do so on that day.
It was just a huge mistake. I mean, the optics were absolutely appalling. What it showed to me was that he really doesn't understand anything about politics. He's made loads of political mistakes during his time. There was a classic. I mean, if you were being cynical about it, he had a chance of a photo op with all the world leaders. He could have been next to Macron, next to Biden. Instead,
but I don't like any of those
No,
people.
I'm sure you don't. That is being cynical.
With a certain electorate. Can't stand Trudeau. I think he's a revolting dictator.
But it's still good for electoral.
Him on the world stage.
Yes, it makes him look prime ministerial.
You accuse him of being a globalist. I liked him saying, I'm not bothered about that lot. The veterans, yes. The commemoration, yes. Maybe it seeped into him that he didn't feel he needed to make a public show of being there.
He'll be off on Thursday to the G7.
Yeah, with those very people.
With those very people
And
again.
he won't leave early.
And at this time, I think he'll be there till the very end of the after 8 minutes.
The photograph with the world leaders, he can strut his stuff on the international stage. Starmer would have given his right arm to be in that
Absolutely.
photograph.
That's the point. Yeah.
There was no chance of that photograph for him.
No, absolutely. But I mean, that's the cynical side of it. Quite simply, once he was there, once he'd been with the veterans, he should have known, I've got to stay to the bitter end. I wipe out today. This is the Veterans Day.
I want to put the British public before Trudeau every time.
But why wouldn't he want to be there?
Well, it's much more. It's much preferable to campaigning in Britain.
Yes,
particularly when you're on the losing side.
He came back to sign off the manifesto. A meeting at 6 o'clock. You could have had the meeting at 10 o'clock.
Of course he could.
12 o'clock.
Yes.
6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
It was still going to be there the
no
next
argument.
day.
It was a catastrophic mistake, and it does, as Nigel said. I mean, his political judgment is terrible.
Yeah, and he's happy to apologise every time he opens his mouth.
Yeah, I mean, he's a decent man in my opinion.
Decent.
He's a man of integrity, and I respect his intelligence, but I don't respect his political judgment.
Because it's poor.
And he's surrounded by the most appalling cabinet in living memory.
Not that we see the cabinet.
Well, you don't,
We're
because
just seeing
they're
Rishi
running scared.
and a man called Mel Stride. Who else are we seeing in this campaign?
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
extraordinary.
And Mel Stride, for goodness sake.
The Work and Pension
What a
Secretary.
disaster. Or
He's
Richard
dull.
Holden, even worse, with that catastrophic interview
the Tory chairman.
with John Craig. John Craig, who was doing a pool interview, and John is the nicest interviewer you could get and the fairest, and yet Holden made a complete mess of it and even drove John to distraction.
I know.
It was absolutely suicidal.
Why are we not seeing the cabinet? Do you think they're too busy fighting their seats? They're worried about their seats, Nigel? Or is it Rishi
Bit of
trying
that,
to
yeah.
push himself forward at every opportunity because he wants to try and increase his popularity?
I think that we've come to presidential campaigns in this country. So we normally see the Prime Minister out there right at the front. Some of the other ones, yes, Jeremy Hunt may lose his seat. So we haven't seen any sign of Jeremy Hunt there on the campaign trail. But I think that it's the way we design it. We've got this idea that it's Keir Starmer versus Rishi Sunak, much in the way it would be Biden versus Trump.
Yeah, and we only see, in Labour's campaign, we see Starmer, Rachel Reeves, not many others.
No, you don't. You see Wes Streeting because health is a big one.
You don't see much of Angela Rayner.
No, and I think that the answer is for a British election, we ought to see far more people.
Yes, because they're the people who are going to run the country.
Let me just read out some of the messages. We're waiting for Rishi Sunak. He's going to be launching the Conservative Manifesto.
With bated breath, we're waiting.
Silverstone.
With bated breath.
At the racetrack. What do you think about the choice of venue, Piers, choosing Silverstone to make the announcement?
Well, I have no idea why he picked it. I
think it's about being at the forefront of technology and it's thrusting British industry.
I don't agree with that.
Silverstone's probably the most run-down F1 track.
You're so right.
Of them.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. It's got peeling paints and an old racetrack.
But Nigel, were you there?
It's a lot of empty space.
Yeah, in '97, when Major launched his campaign, I don't know which racetrack it was, and there was going to be a photograph with a Brands Hatch Formula One car. The blimmin' thing was perched on bricks. The wheels had come off. So all the headlines was "Wheels come off Tory campaign."
Yeah.
So
I think he should have launched it on the Bibby Stockholm, actually. Then at least there'd be someone on these boats.
or on a plane to Rwanda. A plane to Rwanda. Somebody, the Home Secretary's been to Rwanda. No, one migrant has been to Rwanda. Let's be fair, one.
Yeah.
But he was happy to go, and we had to pay him to go. Maybe that's where we should have done it.
Yes. Well, of course, if it was next week, he'd be Royal Ascot. which would be much more appropriate.
Yeah, quite.
Well, quite.
Let's have a look what people are saying at home. Janet has said, I know exactly what Nigel Farage meant when he said that Sunak didn't understand our culture. He's first-generation immigrant. They often don't have the historical perspective around the sacrifice made by fathers and grandfathers and uncles and brothers and cousins, as the family wasn't here then. Even though they are living in England, their immediate culture is not British yet, she says. You need a few generations for that to instill. What do you make of that, Piers?
No. Okay. Sorry, I don't buy that.
Yeah, I go along with a no as well for something like that. It's suggesting what Nigel was trying to suggest.
Yes.
His dad was a GP. Mum ran a local pharmacy.
Is that right? I've never heard that before.
Keir Starmer.
Why doesn't he make more of that?
And Keir Starmer. Did I tell you my dad was a toolmaker? Angela Rayner.
And I tell you I had a factory, by the way.
I know the factory. Angela, did I tell you I had a baby when I was 16? My life was so terrible and hard. They just weird all this stuff out. We can't stand it, really.
It's very tedious.
I know, it really is.
But also, our viewers are actually saying that this is the Conservatives just trying to pull down Nigel Farage, that the Conservatives are scared of Nigel Farage, Piers, and
Correct.
therefore you're scraping the
Yeah.
barrel to criticise him.
Well, I think, Nigel Farage, yes, of course, he is a huge, he's not just a threat now, he's reality, because he's going to take an awful lot of votes from the Conservatives. There's no doubt about it. I think he would have taken more if he hadn't made that one remark. That's my only point. But I think he may just have peaked. But
we'll see.
We've still got 4 weeks to go.
We have.
And again, this is Sunak's fault for calling a 6-week campaign, which he didn't need to do.
In France, they called the election on Sunday, and the first part of the vote will be before our election.
And that's what we should adopt. I mean, in the old days, we used to have 3-week elections.
Absolutely.
And now we seem to have they get longer and longer, and the 6-week election is just too much.
And it bores everybody to death in the end.
So this person has got in touch. They're calling themselves Dark Days Ahead. They said, the mainstream media and the Tories are running scared. The attacks on Nigel Farage will be frequent from now until the election. He already explained what he said, and he wasn't being racist. Why is it the Tories always bring out the racist card when Farage is doing well? It won't work anymore. Now...
But look, Nigel Farage can take it. He dishes it out very well. He would perform very well in the leaders' debate on Friday. And he dishes it out. And he was more focused, I think, in his attack on Rishi there, where he accused him of being not patriotic, and I thought that was a fair comment.
That is better, yes.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, with Nigel, he's such a good performer. He's got 4 weeks to recover from this, which I suspect he will do.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're getting peaks and troughs already in this election.
Yeah.
And the charts are going up and down every week, as you'd expect in a campaign. So he's got plenty of time to come back, much more so than Rishi.
There could be a Trump effect as well, remember, as it were. If the mainstream media attack Nigel Farage so much and people feel disenfranchised, disconnected, and they think he is anti-establishment, that might play in his favour.
Well, I mean, certainly he is anti-establishment. That's the whole. I mean, that's his reason to exist. So I think that when it comes down, the Trump sort of argument is valid in the sense that Nigel Farage will always have his core voters. He'll have his base, just like President Trump has his base. So no one cares about Trump being a convicted felon. Those people will vote for him anyway.
Yeah.
Where the problem comes, and I think this is where the point Piers was making, is when you broaden that out, that Nigel will have those voters will stick with him, but other people who are not quite sure might decide not to go that way.
Exactly, that's my point, exactly.
And he wouldn't object to it. He is a Marmite character.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And 'twas ever thus.
Yeah. But, I mean, so far, he's the success of this campaign.
He is.
Don't forget, it's always from day one been Labour's to lose.
Yeah.
Because if you go into an election 20 points ahead, I mean, you've got to be pretty hopeless to lose with that kind of lead.
Theresa May
hardly ever happened.
Theresa May nearly managed it, of course, in 2017.
Yes, she very nearly did, yes.
And of course, we're going to see the Manifesto launch. They're preparing for it in Silverstone, as Piers Pottinger points out, one of the most run-down Formula 1 tracks in the whole of the country.
Well, in the world, definitely.
Yeah, in the world.
With that kind of backdrop, it might as well be anywhere.
Well,
I mean, what's the point of having it somewhere where it doesn't...
I know.
And you imagine all the headlines tomorrow: reverse gear, second gear,
Pit stop.
Pit stop. Yeah, what were the other things we thought?
He's not at the front of the grid.
All of
that stuff.
all of those jokes and
blowout.
If it goes
Overtaking, undertaking.
So and there's somebody else.
Gillian Keegan.
It's Gillian Keegan. She
leapt onto
the Education
stage
Secretary, who is the MP. She's a candidate in Chichester. She's got a big fight in her hands. So she is introducing her. That's an interesting choice.
Very interesting choice. Why would he have Gillian Keegan introducing him?
Female.
She needs to be careful the roof doesn't fall in.
Yeah, because she'll blame... Because the taxpayer has to pick up the bill.
That's right.
Yeah.
And she's not Penny Mordaunt.
And she's not Penny Mordaunt.
That's an important point.
But of course, this feeds into the criticism that I've been making, that we've not seen enough of the team.
That's right.
Education is a hugely important part of... but I bet you education will form a very small part of the manifesto, although I suspect they're going to they're going to do something on faith schools. Don't you think, Nigel?
Yeah, I mean...
I think Catholic schools, they may be aware, if they only want to take Catholics, they can.
Yes, it may well be there'll be something in there on that. I mean, they've certainly been talking about that in the past.
Yeah. But I mean, education has hardly... I don't think it's surfaced in this campaign at all, has it?
No.
Oh, apart from Labour going to bring in... They're going to teach children 3 and 5 years how to brush their teeth. Nanny state.
But if you remember the absolute chaos when the announcement about the school roofs falling in, we haven't heard anything since that.
No.
About whether they've been fixed or whether anything has fallen down.
And also...
Nothing. That big panic, countrywide panic.
And why the Education Secretary decided to own it for the government when it's a problem for education authorities all around the country, because it's probably been around since the Blair government.
She caused that panic.
She did.
Unnecessarily.
Yeah. Every time I meet her, she says, "Oh, it's Andrew Pearce. Why do you write such terrible things about me?" Why do you think so? Have a guess.
She's seen as sort of being quite normal, isn't she, Gillian? Well,
she went to a comprehensive and she didn't go to university. She did an apprenticeship.
Imagine a world where, given that
93%
of people won't go to state school in this country, it's unusual to have somebody in government who went to state school.
Yeah, and she didn't go to university. She did an apprenticeship. She's very proud of the fact she did an apprenticeship.
But she's from Liverpool.
She is.
There's a great tradition in comedians.
Yeah.
Jimmy Tarbuck, Ken Dodd.
Yeah.
Just to name. So maybe she's telling a few jokes now to keep them all happy.
Yeah. I can't see them rolling around the room. Can you?
No.
And then Nigel, look ahead. We've got Labour's manifesto launch
coming on Thursday. Yes, that's right. Yeah.
They've gone long.
Yes. Yeah. Probably best to go last on something like this.
Although reform is next week.
And reform is next week. So, but I mean, for Labour to come after the Tories, I think that's always a good way. They can pull apart the Tory manifesto for the next couple of days, then launch their own.
Yeah.
And I think they've got a few things they need to clarify to actually make it work.
This thing on VAT on private schools, which Piers was earlier talking about, pure class war envy.
I don't think it's that.
In my view, it's definitely going to lead to larger class sizes, certainly in the first year or two.
Well, again, we have to see if A, schools close down, some are in financial trouble anyway, it might do for them, and whether or not parents withdraw their children. But we are talking about 1.5 billion you can raise from this, which is quite a lot. So there's a number of things that Labour have already earmarked to actually spend that on.
Right, now just telling you, Ben Houchin, who turned the tide in the mayoral elections in May, he's the member Teesside, I think, Nigel, Ben Houchin.
Tees Valley, yeah.
Tees Valley, he's speaking now. He had a great success. Look, he had 72% of the vote 4 years ago. He got about 58% of the vote this time.
Well, he won. It was important,
and it was important, and he put the boot in on Rishi Sunak about a week later.
Crucially, he didn't have Rishi Sunak on his leafleting material, or barely even had the Conservative Party on his marketing material.
He's a man that some people thought could potentially be a Tory leader, but he's taken a peerage, so he's not interested in that. He's still only 38. Quite interesting.
It is. He's very impressive.
It is.
He looks older than 38.
So he could still renounce his peerage and take the job.
Along with David Frost, David Cameron. Do you think we'll see much of David Cameron in this campaign?
Well, we haven't seen any of him so far.
Apart from when he stood in for the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
I have a theory on this. The Sunday Times reported that he was apoplectic that the Prime Minister came back early and he told him not to do it. I have a theory that he probably said, "You go back, Prime Minister. I'll stand next to the President of the United States. I'll be photographed. I need to burnish my international credentials after the Green Seal lobbying scandal, which destroyed his reputation." That's my Machiavellian theory.
I think David Cameron's probably enjoying a beer with Jeremy Clarkson in Chipping Norton.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, he's also travelling around the world quite a lot. And there are quite a few crises that the Foreign Secretary ought to be dealing with.
He thought he had a year as Foreign Secretary, which is why he came back, because he does need to improve his reputation, because he hasn't got one.
Yeah, and also he's bored. He was bored. I mean, he was sitting in his shed not doing very much.
Exactly.
So he had to come out, and given a job like Foreign Secretary, yeah, I would imagine he's having great fun doing that.
Well, I imagine he'll be at the G7.
Yeah.
So that's what he's doing at the moment, preparing for that, because even though it's a complete waste of time for them, they've got to go through with it, because it is obviously a vital meeting.
It gives the Prime Minister a chance to shine on the world stage. To look
and
like
particularly now we've had the UN and Hamas agree to the Israeli proposed ceasefire.
Which is the big news of the day, really.
Which
is huge news.
But Israel won't agree to it.
Well, I mean, it's meant to have emanated from Israel in the first place.
Yeah.
So the far right, well, the right in Israel won't like it because they want to keep the war going.
Well, and Hamas will just use the ceasefire as a time to regroup, rearm, and get ready.
Well, hang on. I mean, if this plan works, the idea would be a 6-week ceasefire and a permanent peace after that, with the return of all hostages.
I don't believe Hamas.
Well, okay,
their creed is to destroy the state of Israel.
Yes, that's right. That is right.
So I don't believe them.
But if they've been sufficiently decimated during the war, and the Palestinian Authority can take over Gaza, there is a chance of a lasting peace there.
Right. Well, I don't believe a word they say.
Well, you can't believe what Hamas says, but nevertheless, they apparently have said they agree to this, so we'll have to see what happens. But this surely is one of the most important things, along with the Ukraine situation, still something that we keep pushing away. Yet the situation in Ukraine is critical, and Putin is making increasingly militant noises and threats. And the biggest danger to Europe at the moment is Russia, without any doubt. And these are very big issues. The world goes on aside from these elections.
And yet foreign policy rarely surfaces in a general election campaign.
No.
Even though the world is at its most unstable for years.
Minutiae of constituencies.
Yeah, teaching kids how to brush their teeth in a classroom.
Yeah.
Well, and cost of living. I mean, important things that actually do affect people, cost of living and so on. But you can understand that voters don't care hugely about what is going on in the rest of the world unless they're directly threatened by it.
It's the pound in your pocket.
It is.
And after Labour win, they've used the word change, and that's what we'll all have, loose change, by the time they tax us out of existence.
If you're just joining us, we're waiting for Rishi Sunak to take to the stage in Silverstone to launch the Conservative Manifesto. Nuff said on Twitter, has said Silverstone going round in circles.
There you see all the jokes
started.
Of course they will.
Yeah, it won't be a lap
fast
of
lane,
honour.
slow lane.
Yeah.
No lap of honour.
No, they're going to come. Exactly. When did we last have a British motor racing world record? Lewis Hamilton.
Yes, Lewis Hamilton. Yeah.
I don't know.
And do you think they're going to Labour going to be very excited that Jamie Oliver appears to be endorsing them? Is that big for Labour?
These sort of showbizy endorsements, I'm always a bit sceptical about.
They start to unravel.
Yeah, they do a bit. So I think they would be pleased rather than ecstatic about it.
Yeah.
It's nice to have the name there, a famous name that people can recognise.
They're quite obsessed with TV chefs because they used Tom Kerridge.
They did.
Yes, Tom Kerridge is the other one who was
Oliver,
brought
whose
in.
restaurant chain only recently went bust.
Leaving lots of people in huge debt.
Exactly, yes. He's
shouldn't
not
forget
hardly
that.
the person I'd want endorsing my campaign, I must say.
Because there were, literally dozens of small firms, but never paid.
Yeah,
and
he's a very
high
and dry.
And he's a very rich
and
man.
It's not me, Gov, not my fault.
But parents
Again,
trust
an
him.
example of how a Labour supporter has no idea how to run a business.
Unfortunately, parents trust him, though, with their children's diet and health. If he's endorsing the Labour Party's campaign to feed kids better in schools, a lot of parents will listen to what Jamie Oliver says. He killed the turkey twizzler, remember? Just to give you a little bit of background gossip of what's going on at Silverstone, our very own Camilla Tominey has tweeted, lovely catering ladies at Silverstone UK tell me that they offered to serve breakfast, croissants, etc. to the assembled press this morning, but the Conservatives declined the offer of food. So now we have a group of hangry journalists covering the manifesto launch.
Not good, because
yes, the journalists were warned to bring their own food.
Were they really?
Yes, they were, yeah.
But Nigel's saying they had to bring their own food. Oh, this is the cut-price Tory party.
Well, that doesn't look good, does it? That doesn't...
They won't get very good write-ups on the back of that.
No.
No, exactly.
Well, a nice croissant. And he's still banging on, Ben Houghton. I don't know why he thinks anybody's vaguely interested in anything he's got to say. I mean, he's doing the warm-up act, but it's the main chance.
Well, we've had 2 warm-up acts so far. Do you think we'll get a juggler next?
Well...
Maybe Ed Davey could come on his swing trunks.
Yes. Maybe that's what the Prime Minister should have done, a water slide or something.
He's had a good week, though, Ed Davey, I think.
He has. I mean, but it seems like he's ticking off something on his bucket list all the way through.
Yes.
I desperately want to fall off a paddleboard and desperately want to go down a fun ride in Thorpe Park. It doesn't seem to damage him at all, and he's likely to get an awful lot of MPs under the present polling.
Yeah.
He could come back as the official opposition, the way things are looking.
It's a great party to be a leader of, because you've got no policies, you've got no chance of power, you don't really have to do anything, and mugs all over the country will waste a vote on you.
Well, they did do something in coalition. I mean, they certainly tempered what the Tories were doing and introduced various things. The personal allowance at over 12,000 now, that is a Lib Dem idea. So they were able to actually influence government when they were in it. The problem was it destroyed their party for 10 years after.
And they also presided over the post office scandal, because 3 successive post office ministers between 2010 and 2015 were Lib Dem when this scandal was at its worst, and they reported to the Secretary of State, who was Vince Cable, Lib Dem.
I know.
It's on their watch.
Davey, again, has managed successfully to avoid any questions about the post office scandal, for which he has yet to properly apologise as well.
Yeah.
And that is the serious side of it.
Yeah.
I've just seen some breaking footage on Twitter of Nigel Farage on the Reform Big Blue Bus in South Yorkshire today. And he had rocks thrown at him
by a
protester. That Nigel's just posted this footage. No doubt Emily and Tom will bring you this. There was a big crowd there, and a left-wing, as Nigel's describing them, a left-wing violent mob took rocks out of a builder's bucket and threw them up to the bus.
And you see, people thought it wasn't...
it hit him.
It hit him. And that could have hit him in the face. And, of course, he had the milkshake thrown at him. That could easily have been acid.
Well, he got hit by a rock.
This is a gift for Nigel.
And this is what I'm saying about the Trump effect.
Yeah.
If enough people start literally physically attacking the man, we like an underdog in this country. We vote for people who are being persecuted.
Yes, that actually gives you... That sort of thing gives you votes.
And it will give him votes.
And they've caught him, so they should.
And he
should be charged with a criminal... I mean, that's assault. And it's a pretty big rock he's picked up.
Big rock.
Walking from past a building site.
A piece of, like, concrete he's taken out of... and it hits him. It does hit him.
He's not hurt. He's not hurt.
No, he's not
but he's thrown 2.
Yeah. And then the builders... Looks like the builders are actually the ones who reprimand him, who grab him.
And there's the dozy police. Look at the dozy police.
Jogging very slowly. Yeah. And then one of the police gets this guy and wrestles him to the ground. And good for them.
Too. We're still waiting for Rishi Sunak to deliver the Conservative Party manifesto. I did say with bated breath, I hope you have been breathing since, because you're living smile.
You know what? I think he's gone back to London. He's left early.
He's gone early.
Yes,
Here he comes. Here's Rishi Sunak.
Right.
So we'll hand over to Rishi Sunak to launch the Tory manifesto. He's getting a round of applause, standing ovation, but they are all Tory party members.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. It's great to be with you all, and great to be here at Silverstone. Nowhere better, in fact, to mark the fact that our economy has truly turned a corner. Now, we're a month away from the Grand Prix here, and we can be confident about even more British success. 7 of the world's 10 leading Formula One teams are all based here. More Grand Prix cars are made in this country than anywhere else. And the UK has won more titles than any other nation. So Formula One is a great example of all our strengths coming together, our technological know-how, our innovative advanced manufacturing capability, and the skill of our workforce. 25,000 engineers and apprentices are involved in this industry. And Formula One isn't the only thing they do here at Silverstone. As nice as it would be for Brad Pitt to turn up at our Manifesto launch, he's currently filming just outside with a brilliant British crew. One of the many UK-based productions taking place thanks to our support and tax cuts for the creative sector. So from the Northern Studios in Hartlepool to Pinewood to the coming Crown Studios in Sunderland, Britain is truly now the creative capital of Europe. So just thinking about that, the fact that we can lead the world in such competitive fields should make us all enormously proud of our country, but crucially optimistic about our future, because we Brits can outcompete the best in the world. And what we Conservatives want is more British success stories, and that's what our manifesto will deliver. Now, the last few years have been some of the toughest our country has faced in decades. We were hit by COVID and then the spike in energy prices following Putin's invasion of Ukraine. But economic stability is now returning. Inflation back to normal. Real wages been rising for almost a year now, and the economy growing healthily again. So the question now is, who is best to turn that foundation into a secure future for you, your family, and our country? Now, this manifesto is our clear plan for the United Kingdom. It's about the bold actions that we will take to deliver that secure future. And we Conservatives know that security is essential for success. And that's why we're raising defence investment to 2.5% of GDP by 2030 to deal with the increasingly uncertain world that we live in. This is the biggest sustained increase in the defence budget since the end of the Cold War, and one that Keir Starmer will not match. Labour would rather keep the civil service at its bloated, pandemic level rather than give our armed forces the equipment they need. And when there is a war in Europe, turmoil in the Middle East, China flexing its muscles in the South China Sea, we are in a world of increasing threats, and we must show our enemies that this country, with our allies, will stand strong. Now, this axis of authoritarian states, Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, must know that their attempts to destabilize our world will simply not succeed. Now is the time for bold action, not an uncertain Keir Starmer as our Prime Minister. Now, our increase in defence investment will not only fire up our defence industrial base, creating good jobs here at home from Barrow to Lossiemouth, but allow us to stand up for our interests, deter our enemies, and defend our values. Is it only we Conservatives, with our iron resolve, who can be trusted to keep Britain safe? Now, we need border security too. The confidence that it is your government that decides who comes to our country and not criminal gangs. And that is why if you vote Conservative on July the 4th, the flights removing illegal migrants will depart in July, establishing the deterrent that will stop the boats. Because when people know that if they try to come here illegally, they won't get to stay, then they will stop coming. And if we are forced to choose between our security and the jurisdiction of a foreign court, including the ECHR, we will always choose our nation's security. But Labour have no answer to this question. As you saw the other week, Keir Starmer simply can't tell you what he would do with people who come here illegally because he doesn't believe it's a problem. Now, with Brexit, we took control of our borders, but migration has been too high in recent years, and we have a clear plan to reduce it. Last year, we announced changes which mean 300,000 people who were previously eligible to come here now can't. And we will introduce a migration cap that means Parliament, your elected representatives, will vote on how many people should be able to come here every year. Our plan is clear. We will halve migration as we have halved inflation and then reduce it every single year. Now, we don't just need military and border security. As Putin's invasion of Ukraine has shown, we need energy security too. It is only by having reliable, homegrown sources of energy that we can to send our bills soaring. So in our approach to energy policy, we will put security and your family finances ahead of unaffordable eco-zealotry. Unlike Labour, we don't believe that we will achieve energy security via a state-controlled energy company that doesn't in fact produce any energy. That will only increase costs. And as Penny put it well on Friday, there's only one thing that the GB Energy stands for, and that's giant bills. Now, our clear plan is to achieve energy security through new gas-powered stations, trebling our offshore wind capacity, and by having new fleets of small modular reactors. These will make the UK a net exporter of electricity, giving us greater energy independence and security from the aggressive actions of dictators. And let me just reiterate that. With our plan, we will produce enough electricity to both meet our domestic needs and export to our neighbours. Look at that, a clear, conservative plan, not only generating security, but also prosperity for our country. And we Conservatives also have a plan to give you financial security. We will enable working people to keep more of the money that you earn, because you have earned it and have the right to choose what you spend it on. Now, Keir Starmer takes a very different view. He says he's a socialist. And we all know what socialists do, don't we? They take more of your money because they think it belongs to them. Now, I know Labour have been taking inspiration from one of Brad Pitt's most famous films. The first rule of Labour tax rises is that you don't talk about tax rises. But we know that the policies Labour have already announced will require them to increase taxes on working households by £2,094. My friends, families cannot afford that, and it is our job to make sure that that doesn't happen. Now, I had to take difficult decisions because of COVID, but now we are cutting taxes for workers, for parents and pensioners. And we are the party of Margaret Thatcher and Nigel Lawson, a party unlike Labour that believes in sound money. So today's plans, and you would expect nothing less from Jeremy and me, are fully funded. We will pay for permanent reductions in taxation by controlling the unsustainable rise in working age welfare that has taken off since the pandemic. In this party, we believe that it is morally right that those who can work do work, and that hard work is rewarded with people being able to keep more of their own money. So we will ensure that we have lower welfare so that we can deliver lower taxes. And as Conservatives, we believe that hard work shouldn't be taxed twice. That's unfair. That's why Jeremy has been cutting national insurance contributions that only workers are forced to pay. Our national insurance tax cuts are already worth £900 to the average worker. And we will keep cutting taxes in the coming years, meaning that by 2027, we will have halved national insurance to 6%. That is a tax cut, my friends, worth £1,300 to the average worker. Making more progress towards our long-term ambition to abolish the double taxation on work when it is economically responsible to do so. Now, I also want to say something about the self-employed, because they're the risk takers, the people who graft hard to make a living, who get our economy growing. They embody the most conservative of values, the desire to build something, to create wealth and opportunity. But setting up on your own means you don't have the same security that those on payroll do. So it must be worth taking that risk. We need to make it worth taking that risk. And that means that their taxes must be cut. So, in the next Parliament, we will scrap entirely the main rate of self-employed national insurance. A tax abolished and enterprise encouraged. We want to encourage more people to become entrepreneurs, to set up their own businesses, to try and make something of it. So we will abolish that tax for millions of our hardest workers and create a new culture of enterprise in our country. We Conservatives want a Britain where setting up a business is as natural as taking a job. So we will do more for the self-employed so that they can do more for Britain. Now, security also means the security of knowing that you will have dignity in retirement. So we will also cut tax for pensioners with the new Triple Lock Plus, ensuring that the state pension is never dragged into income tax. Labour, by contrast, would introduce a retirement tax, meaning that for those who rely entirely on the new state pension, they would be caught by income tax for the first time in our country's history. And we know Labour's record. From the 75p state pension increase to Gordon Brown's £118 billion tax raid on private pensions, it is clear your pension simply isn't safe with the Labour Party. And we Conservatives want to spread opportunity across the whole of our United Kingdom. We don't want you to leave the place that you call home to succeed. And ultimately, that is a test of levelling up. So we will give our young people the skills and opportunities they need to succeed in today's world. We won't cling to outdated ideas, such as the belief that the only route to success is through university. So we will curb funding to rip off degrees and use it to fund 100,000 new high-quality apprenticeships. We will build on the success of our education reforms by introducing the Advanced British Standard, which will enable our young people to receive a broader education and break down the split between technical and academic education that has so held our country back. We'll invest in a new form of national service to give our young people the chance to enjoy new experiences, learn new skills, and feel a sense of community, belonging, and national purpose. National service will help us build a more unified, more cohesive society so that we can be secure in the knowledge that we are all on the same side. And we Conservatives also want to create a society in which everyone has a chance to own. In the last 5 years, we've delivered 1 million new homes. In the next Parliament, we will go even further, delivering 1.6 million new homes by speeding up planning on brownfield land in our inner cities and by scrapping defective EU laws. And we will go further, because we Conservatives believe in tax cuts. So, for young families, for the first-time buyers purchasing a home up to £425,000, we will abolish stamp duty entirely. And that's not all we'll do. We'll also introduce a new form of Help to Buy, a new Help to Buy scheme to get a new generation onto the property ladder, all part of our plan to build an ownership society where more and more people have the security and pride that comes from owning your own home. From Macmillan to Thatcher to today, it is we Conservatives who are the party of the property-owning democracy in this country. In fact, we want to make life easier for people at every stage of their lives. So we'll also give working parents 30 hours of free childcare a week from when their child is 9 months to when they start school. We'll make child benefit fairer and simpler by moving to a household system that no longer penalises single-earner households and ensuring that any family that earns less than £120,000 a year will receive it. That tax cut is worth, on average, £1,500 to 700,000 families, showing, once again, it is we Conservatives that are the party of the family, and we will always champion them. And we want all families to have the peace of mind of knowing that the NHS will be there for you if you fall sick. So we will increase NHS funding in real terms every year and train and recruit more doctors and nurses every year. We will make the NHS work better through investing in new technology and reforming how it works. You should know that if your kids have an earache or a sore throat or a chest infection, you can get quick and rapid treatment without having to take time off work, and so we will expand our fantastic Pharmacy First programme. But parents should also feel that it's safe for their children to walk home at night. So we will recruit 8,000 new police officers, one for every neighbourhood, and cut antisocial behaviour through intensive hotspot policing. And we will protect women and girls by guaranteeing single-sex spaces through an amendment to the Equality Act to make it clear that sex means biological sex. Now, Labour like to talk the country down. They want to pretend that everything would be great if they had never left office and pretend that somehow we have not achieved anything. But that's just simply not right. Remember the note that said there's no money left? When Labour left office in 2010, unemployment was higher than when they came into government. Public and private debt was accumulating, the banking system was broken, the deficit was ballooning, and even Labour accepted that after years of spending, significant cuts in public expenditure were required. They went into the 2010 election admitting they would have to make cuts. Labour left Britain on the brink of bankruptcy. Worse, the money that Labour had put into public service had not been accompanied by sufficient reform. Labour's welfare system was more about disguising how many people were out of work than actually getting people back into employment. And for all the money that Labour had put into education, our schools were falling down international league tables. And almost half of Labour's increase in the NHS budget had been swallowed up by higher pay and more bureaucracy. And despite that awful inheritance, we've delivered the third highest rate of economic growth in the G7, created 4 million jobs, 800 a day. With Kemi using our Brexit freedoms to open up new markets, we have now overtaken France, the Netherlands and Japan to become the 4th biggest exporter in the world. And we Conservatives under David took the difficult decisions to repair the public finances and control the national debt. And that meant that when COVID hit, we could support people and businesses with furlough, deliver the fastest vaccine rollout in the world, and provide record funding to the NHS. We reformed welfare by capping benefits and introducing universal credit. Ian's reforms mean that now work always pays. We've reduced absolute poverty. We've reduced child poverty. We've reduced pensioner poverty. We've cut carbon emissions by a third, maintained our position as NATO's second biggest defence power, and Boris and Ben and Grant put the country at the forefront of defending Ukraine against Russian aggression, because Britain will always stand up to tyrants. We've halved violent and neighbourhood crime, thanks to the work of Home Secretaries from Theresa to Priti to James, and improved standards in our schools. Thanks to Michael's reforms and a generation of inspiring teachers, English school children are not just the best readers in the United Kingdom, they're the best in the Western world. We strengthened our United Kingdom with the forces of separatism in retreat. We legislated for equal marriage, and now it is not even surprising for so many people from diverse backgrounds to sit around our cabinet table. I know you'll agree with me. We may not have got everything perfectly right, but that is a record I am mighty proud of. Now, this country has a proud past and I believe in that innate confidence in ourselves that has always run through our island story. And just as we're proud of all that we created, invented and discovered in our past, so we can be confident and optimistic about what we will achieve in our future. But I'm not blind to the fact that people are frustrated with our party and frustrated with me. Things have not always been easy, and we have not got everything right. But we are the only party in this election with the big ideas to make our country a better place to live. Labour offer no solutions to our problems. They would only make them worse. And all a vote for reform or the Liberal Democrats does is allow Labour to do whatever they want to our country. Do not forget that Keir Starmer is asking you to hand him a blank cheque when he hasn't said what he'll buy with it or how much it's going to cost you. Just think about what Labour would mean. Higher taxes for every working household. Can you afford £2,000 more in taxes? French-style labour laws that will lead to higher unemployment and more strikes, a ballooning welfare bill, higher immigration and more net zero costs. Their policies will mean, as they let slip this weekend, bigger class sizes because of their desire to slap VAT on school fees. Labour would cave into the demands of the public sector unions, putting up your taxes to meet the unions' extortionate demands. And Keir Starmer will also use that blank cheque to change the rules of the game to his benefit, giving 16-year-olds the vote, not because he believes they are adults. He doesn't want them to serve on a jury or do any of the other things that adults do, but because he thinks they'll vote for him and that will make it harder to remove him from power. If Labour win this time, they'll change the rules so that they are in power for a very long time. So if you don't know what Labour will do, don't vote for it. If you're concerned about what Starmer isn't telling you, don't vote for him. And if you're worried about what Labour's £2,094 of tax rises would mean for your family's financial security, don't vote for them. In conclusion, let me say this. We Conservatives will always stand for our values, for aspiration, for freedom, for opportunity, for security. Your Conservative MP will deliver lower taxes, lower immigration, protected pensions, and a sensible approach to net zero. Now, our country wants a clear plan and bold action. Our country needs a secure future, and it is this Conservative manifesto that will deliver it. Thank you. Thank you. Right, we've got lots of questions from the media to come, so the fun hasn't stopped. Here we go. Let's start with GB News.
Prime Minister Christopher Hope from GB News. You stand in front of a slogan saying clear pan, bold action, secure future. Well, why not be bold and commit to pulling out of the ECHR if it keeps stopping the small boats?
Thanks, Chris. I've been clear throughout that I believe that our plan is compliant with all our international obligations. But I've also been clear, and the manifesto is crystal clear, that if we are forced to choose between the jurisdiction of a foreign court, including the ECHR, and our country's national security, then I'm going to choose our country's national security every single time. Next, we go to the FT.
Prime Minister, George Parker from the Financial Times. You represent a northern seat, Richmond. You've seen the opinion polls, you've seen Keir Starmer campaigning in the north of England. Do you reflect on the last 5 years and consider you may have let down the areas you promised to level up, and whether indeed there's a reckoning coming?
George, I don't know if you were here before, but I don't know if you heard the speech from the Conservative Mayor of Teesside, who is right here. And I'll take a second to pay tribute to Ben and all our fantastic MPs in the Tees Valley for what they've delivered for the region. I mean, Ben gave you a flavour of it before, because we've been working together since I became an MP. You talk about the north. Teesside was an area that Labour neglected for decades, took it completely for granted. And it was Ben and our MPs and councillors that transformed the region. And I was fortunate to be able to work with them to help do that. But if you go around Teesside now, every high street and town centre, Eaglescliffe, Yarm, Stockton, Darlington, Hartlepool is getting investment from our various levelling up funds. The new Brexit-enabled Freeport is creating unbelievable high-quality jobs in the industries of the future. The Treasury campus is in Darlington, and as Ben said, it's one thing for Treasury campus to be in the north, but it's not in Newcastle, it's not in Manchester, it's not in Leeds, it's in Darlington, because towns matter. Which is why we're also backing 130 towns across the country, including in the north, with £20 million each, so local people can invest in their priorities. But more than any of that, what Ben and the team have done, what the Conservatives have done, is give everyone in Teesside a sense of confidence and optimism about their futures. Next, we go to the BBC.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Chris Mason, BBC News. For much of the last 18 months, you've tried everything to try and revive Conservative fortunes, and not much appears to have worked. Could we rename this document today your Last Chance Saloon? What do you think is in this that can shift things that perhaps haven't shifted up until now? Thank you.
Well, Chris, I've been very clear when I got this job. We'd been through a very difficult time as a country. But thanks to the hard work and resilience of the British people and the actions of the government, we have truly turned a corner. Inflation back to normal, the economy growing, wages rising, energy bills falling. And that's why this election is right to talk about the future. The future that we want to deliver for our country is one where, above all, families will have financial security because their taxes are being cut. Look at what this manifesto contains. A tax cut for everyone in work as we halve the rate of national insurance. A tax cut for the self-employed, abolishing the rate of self-employed national insurance in the next Parliament. A tax cut for pensioners, protecting the state pension from paying Labour's retirement tax in the next Parliament because we believe in a country where you have dignity in retirement. A tax cut for parents, because we want to support working families, making sure that they get support with their children's costs, and a tax cut for all young aspiring homeowners as we abolish first-time buyer stamp duty up to £425,000. That is bold action from this Conservative government, this Conservative party, to deliver a more secure future. But it doesn't just stop with our tax-cutting agenda. We're spreading opportunity through 100,000 new apprenticeships and a modern form of national service. We're ensuring our border security with a new legal migration cap in Parliament and a plan to get the flights off to Rwanda, and we're ensuring our country's energy security, but also doing it in a proportionate way that lowers people's bills, does not saddle them with extra costs in an ideological pursuit towards net zero. That is the offer in this manifesto, and there is a clear choice at this election. We are the only party putting bold action on the table to transform our country. Labour have nothing to say about the problems our country faces and how best to address them. Nothing. Keir Starmer is asking for a blank cheque, and he will not tell people which taxes he is going to put up that are ultimately going to cost them £2,000. So if you want a secure future, if you want lower taxes, if you want your pensions protected, if you want a more sensible approach to net zero, and you want your border secure, vote Conservative at this election. Next, Times Radio.
Kay McCann, Times Radio. Prime Minister, Times Radio listeners often tell us that they're fed up that nothing works. They care a lot about the services they use every day. But there is nothing in this manifesto about the billions of pounds of cuts to local councils, to justice, to prisons that are coming down the track in the years ahead. What is your plan to prevent those billions of pounds of cuts? Thank you.
Well, under our plans, Kate, investment in day-to-day public services will continue to rise in the new Parliament. It will continue to rise ahead of inflation. But I also think it is reasonable to look for efficiencies in the public sector. And what we've seen is that public sector productivity since the pandemic has declined. It's declined quite significantly. Now, as the Chancellor set out a little while ago, if we just recover those levels of efficiency that we had a few years ago, so nothing heroic, nothing that we haven't done before, that will free up £20 billion. Right? £20 billion that could be reinvested in public services on everyone's behalf without raising a penny of their taxes. So I think that's the right priority. Right? Recover where we used to be before the pandemic, focus on efficiency and productivity, and you can see that in the NHS productivity plan that we have fully funded. And if we do that, that unlocks billions of pounds that we can reinvest back into the front line to deliver better high-quality services for people. Because, of course, I want to see high-quality services, but as a Conservative, I also don't want people's taxes to have to go up when we can get efficiencies to fund them. ITV.
Prime Minister, Tories in government since 2010 have been pushing up the tax burden, the share of national income taken by tax, to levels we haven't seen since the late 1940s. Why should anyone believe you when you say you're going to cut tax?
Well, simply, Robert, because we already have. look, so I'm upfront with people. I did have to take difficult decisions after COVID. That was the right thing to do. Because when I was Chancellor, I thought the right thing to do was to support our country through COVID. Whether it was supporting the NHS, whether it was a furlough scheme. And when the energy crisis in Europe hit, the right thing to do was to help everyone with their energy bills. Those things don't come for free, and I think everyone watching knows that those things don't come for free. And you don't build our country's long-term financial security by shying away from difficult decisions like that. That's not the type of leader I am. So I did make those difficult decisions. But now that our plan has worked, inflation is down, wages are rising, the economy's growing, we have started cutting people's taxes. This year, everyone in work is getting a £900 tax cut on average, thanks to what Jeremy has done. And we're cutting taxes for businesses, making this the most attractive country in the world for businesses to invest. Something that hundreds of our leading businesses describe as the single most transformational thing that we could do for growth and productivity in our country. Delivered it. So yes, people can trust me when I say we're going to keep cutting their taxes. One, because we've set out a very clear plan to pay for it, because I think the welfare bill is growing at an unsustainable rate, and there is an opportunity, again, just to reverse some of the damage that COVID has done to free up an enormous amount of savings that we can reinvest in tax cuts, but also because that's the type of country I believe in. And that's why people can trust me. I believe in a country where hard work is rewarded. That's why I want to cut people's tax when they're working hard. I believe in a country that encourages entrepreneurship and risk-taking and small businesses, which is why I want to cut taxes for the self-employed. I believe everyone should have the ability to own their own home. So I want to cut taxes on stamp duty. I believe if you worked hard all your life, you should have dignity and security in retirement, which is why we want to cut taxes for pensioners. And there is nothing more precious in life than my family. And I'm sure that's the same for everyone in this room, which is why we want to support families and we want to cut tax for them too. That's why you can trust me. Can I go to the Daily Mail?
Thanks, PM. Jason Gross from the Daily Mail. You're targeting the self-employed here. Do you think White Van Man can swing this election for you? And on the wider picture, there's a lot to say in here about tax, but unless I've missed it, nothing about the overall burden. Can you today guarantee us that if you get in, overall taxes will be lower by the time you've finished?
Yeah. Jason, because of the measures that are announced in the manifesto, and you can see the document afterwards, the tax burden will be about 1 percentage point lower in every single year compared to the forecast that you saw at the spring budget a couple of months ago that Jeremy outlined. And you talked about a particular group. I do think there is something that is special about those who are self-employed. Now, I come from a small business family myself, but those people who are setting out on their own, taking that risk, do something that's incredibly brave, right? And our economy is built on people like that. They don't have the security of knowing that the paycheck's coming at the end of every month. They're out there working incredibly hard to provide a better life for them and their families, hoping that they can start like that and grow something bigger. And I think that is enormously brave. And they deserve all our admiration, but they also deserve our support. And that's why we want to take the bold action to abolish the main rate of self-employment national insurance in the next Parliament, demonstrating not just that we want people to have financial security, but demonstrating our values and the type of economy and society that we want to build. Telegraph.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Ben Riley-Smith from The Telegraph. Manifestos are about policies. They're also about politics. There's 4 weeks to go. You're 20 points behind in the polls. What do you say to those who say the manifesto isn't ambitious enough and that this won't be a game changer?
Well, Ben, just to repeat what I said before, right? The tax cuts that I went through, tax cut for everyone in work that will be worth £1,300 in the next Parliament as we halve national insurance. Tax cut for the self-employed, where we abolish the rate of self-employment. A tax cut for everyone who's wanting to start buying their own home as we abolish the stamp duty for first-time buyers up to 425k. A tax cut for families to support them as they bear their young children, and a tax cut for the millions of pensioners in our society. So yes, I do believe that is bold, and that comes on top of the action we've taken to secure our borders, to get flights off to Rwanda, a new migration cap, and a more proportionate approach to net zero. But the choice at this election is clear, because all elections are ultimately a choice. Either Keir Starmer or I are going to be Prime Minister on July the 5th. If I'm Prime Minister, you will have this bold action. All you've got from the Labour Party is a blank sheet of paper. Not a single big idea that has been put on the table in this election campaign so far. Right, when the first announcement we made, a new form of national service, which has completely energised conversations everywhere across the country. And yes, not everyone will necessarily agree with it, but no one can deny that it is not bold action that can transform our country, and I think transform our country for the better. Nothing comparable to that from the Labour Party. So as people think about the choice, yes, of course, there are challenges we face as a country, but they should ask themselves, who has the solutions to those? Who is going to do things that are going to actually deliver the change that you want to see? The only thing that is certain about Keir Starmer and the Labour Party is that they're going to put up everyone's taxes, and they're going to put them up by £2,000, and I'm going to fight very hard to the last day of this election campaign so that that doesn't happen. Okay, Sky News.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Central sell to voters from you is, I will cut your taxes. But a recent poll shows that only 1 in 6 voters believe you won't raise their taxes or raise major taxes, compared with 1 in 4 for Labour. Labour's more trusted on tax than you at the moment. That's your record as Chancellor and now Prime Minister. I'm sure it's a disappointment to you. Haven't you blown it now, whatever you say? Thank you.
Well, Beth, I'm actually very proud of my record as Chancellor. Because when I'd had that job 3-4 weeks and a pandemic struck this country, I saw that it was right to do something radical, to do something bold, because that was what was required to help get the country through it, and we delivered on that. Those are my values, those are the values of our party, and we will always be there to protect this country through difficult times. But we're also a responsible party. We're also a party that's not afraid to take decisions that are in the country's long-term interests, even if they're difficult. You saw that with me when I said, yep, we did all these things, but we do need to also pay these things back and secure our children's financial futures. And you saw that with me a couple of summers ago, where I made the same argument again, that it wasn't right then to start cutting taxes until we had tamed inflation, and now that we have, I've delivered on that. So I'm not afraid to do things that are difficult. The only poll that matters is the poll on July 4th, and I'm very confident as we approach that date, the choice will become increasingly clear for people. There is only one party that will continue to cut your taxes after July 4th, and it's the Conservative Party, and there's one party that's going to put them up, and it's the Labour Party, and that choice will be crystal clear. The Sun.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Harry Cole from The Sun. Your manifesto here says that you'll process tens of thousands of outstanding asylum claims within 6 months. But all the Home Office statistics show that speeding up the processing of asylum claims leads to higher levels of approval. When Labour suggested this exact policy, your own ministers called it an amnesty. So is this what your policy accounts to, an amnesty for asylum seekers? And if I may, on Chris's point, you're hemorrhaging support to Nigel Farage. Why on earth not go harder on the ECHR? Why fudge it? Thank you.
So, Harry, that's just simply not right. Last year, thanks to the improvements we've made, we processed more claims than at any point in the last 2 decades, right? And that has actually helped us release over 100, maybe 150 hotels now back to local communities for normal use. And actually the grant rate, you talk about the grant rate was down last year. It was down. So because we changed how we evaluate the claims, we refused far more than we had in the past. But the choice on migration is quite simple at this election. I believe you need a deterrent. Right? We've done lots of things that have helped us get the numbers down by a third last year, and those are all good and sensible. But in order to fully solve this problem, it just needs to be clear that if someone comes to our country illegally, they can't stay. And that means you need a safe place to send them. That's what the flights to Rwanda will do, establish that deterrent. And I've said what I've said about the ECHR, but I'll also say our act specifically gives ministers the power to make the decisions on Rule 39 things that are handed down by Strasbourg. I would not have put that power in the bill if I was not prepared to use it, right? And also change the civil service guidance to make it clear that they need to follow the ministerial decisions. But I'd also point out that, as we've seen in the last month or so, multiple other European countries all agree that having a deterrent like that, safe third countries to return people, is a crucial part of solving this problem. So when I made my speech just after becoming Prime Minister, I said on this issue, where we lead, others will follow. That is now happening. The only person who has not got that memo, normally he's very in favour of EU alignment, is Keir Starmer. Right? Right, could go to the Express.
Thanks, Prime Minister. Steph Spiro from the Daily Express. The manifesto promises a regular rhythm of flights to Rwanda every month as part of a relentless process to remove illegal migrants. Can you put a figure on the number of flights you expect to take off every month, or a number of people, please?
No, Steph, we've deliberately not, because we don't want to compromise operational security, but I've been very clear that it's not just about one flight. You do need a regular rhythm of flights because you need to build that deterrent. And what I can tell you is that the airfield is on standby. Illegal migrants have already been detained. Escorts have been trained. The flights have been booked. The caseworkers are already working through it. So all the plans are in place so that if I'm re-elected as Prime Minister, if we are in government, those flights will go to Rwanda and we can build that deterrent. And that's a choice for everyone at this election. If you want the boats stopped, there is no way to do that without having a deterrent. Ours is the only plan on the table. And as I asked Keir Starmer repeatedly the other night, what would you do with the migrants that come here illegally? There simply wasn't an answer. Right? Just saying smash the gangs is not a plan. A slogan is not a plan. Right? You need to have something to do with illegal migrants. We've got a plan, he doesn't, and that means the situation will just get worse. And I think lastly we have, is it a local democracy reporter?
Hi, sorry, I think I've sat on the wrong side. My name is Nadia Lincoln. I'm the local democracy reporter for Northamptonshire. In the county, we've had a massive problem with SEND children not getting enough provision and not getting the proper education, which has also been reflected nationally. In the most recent report, it found that there were systemic and widespread problems. Why have these families been let down for so long, and what would a Conservative government do to help them?
Yeah. Thanks, Nadia. And we want to make sure that children everywhere, and regardless of their backgrounds, get all the support and the opportunities they need to live fulfilling and thriving lives. When it comes to SEND in particular, we've raised the funding by about 60% overall over this Parliament. I don't have the figures off the top of my head for Northamptonshire, but what we're talked about in the manifesto is to open many more SEND-free schools, which is in the manifesto and funded, because we know that provision needs to increase, and the manifesto makes specific provision for that, because as I said, this is about making sure children, no matter where they grow up in our society, have all the opportunities to be supported and to thrive, and that will always happen under a Conservative government. Good, thank you very, very much.
Well, there we have it. That was the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, unveiling the Conservative Manifesto. In it, headline measures include another cut to national insurance, a white van man tax plan. That was the rabbit out of the hat, working to abolish national insurance for self-employed individuals, but also words there on ignoring the European Court of Human Rights if it gets in the way of Rwanda deportations, and even some stuff on housing.
Yes, interesting that point on the ECHR. That was something Christopher Hope, our political editor, asked. Will he be bold and remove us from that foreign court? He said he will always choose our national security over any foreign court. So sitting on the fence on that one, I think.
Yes, a line he's used before, but clearly the party is divided over the issue of whether to extract the United Kingdom from the ECHR, but perhaps more importantly, a new line in this manifesto, not just the phrase that the Prime Minister will choose national sovereignty every single time over the wishes of a foreign court, but a commitment to work with other countries to reform the way these international treaties work. Now, could that be something that actually gathers some pace after the election results that we saw over the weekend in Europe? It starts to look less like a pipe dream and perhaps something that could actually be achievable.
But I think the main point he wanted to get across from that, and do get in touch and let us know what you think the main points were there and what you made of that all, but it is Labour will tax you more. We are committed to bringing down your taxes. And yes, a few tax cuts announced there too. Well, get in touch, gbnews.com/your say. We're going to have some reaction very soon indeed by our stellar panel. But we're going to bring you some breaking news now. We've had a very worrying development from South Yorkshire. Mark White is here in the studio. Mark, tell us.
Well, this is an incident in which objects from a construction site were thrown at the Reform leader Nigel Farage in Barnsley town centre. We got some video of that we can. I don't think we have some video at the moment, but we will have that soon. It basically shows someone who's wearing a red hoodie at this kind of construction site at the side of a road. Nigel is on a battle bus, a Reform battle bus, going through Barnsley town centre, and a number of objects are thrown towards him. Now, I spoke to Nigel briefly just to ask him. I think we got the video now. You can see the video there. That's Nigel on the bus, just as these objects. There you see, I think that was a coffee cup initially, and there the suspect is running off down the street and is tackled by the police. South Yorkshire police have confirmed that a 28-year-old man has now been arrested on suspicion of a public order related offence, is currently in police custody. As I say, I spoke to Nigel briefly to ask him if he knew what was thrown at him. He said cement, but he also thinks stones and a coffee cup thrown towards him as well. So clearly it's potentially serious, any of these items, especially if it's a harder item thrown from a construction site towards you. It could potentially cause you harm. So Nigel has issued a brief statement saying, "I will not be bullied or cowed by a violent left-wing mob who hate our country," is what he said. And he also thanked South Yorkshire Police for very quickly detaining the suspect, a 28-year-old man now in custody.
It must be said it's heartening to see such rapid response from South Yorkshire Police. Perhaps other police forces around the country could learn from how effective they were there. But Mark, this is of course not an isolated incident. It's becoming part of a pattern.
Well, it is, and it's part of a worrying pattern of incidents in which politicians generally are being targeted, and some of the attacks much more violent than the last. As far as Nigel is concerned, it's only a week since he had a milkshake thrown over him in Essex, and people at the time were thinking, a milkshake, but you don't know. If you're someone who has a liquid thrown over you, in this day and age when acid is quite often used in attacks, what that liquid is, it's thrown over you. So just in that sense, apart from the fact it's horrible to have anything thrown over you, you know, it can be clearly very worrying and alarming for anybody who's at the centre of that attack. And let's remember that this follows a number of violent incidents in Europe, where we had the Slovak Slovakian Prime Minister, who was shot and seriously injured just last month. A few days later, separate incidents in Germany when other politicians, an anti-Islamist rally, were attacked, a policeman killed in one of those incidents, and then another politician a few days later in Germany attacked as well. So some real concern, and some concern for the authorities here as we get right into the cut and thrust of this election campaign, when politicians are at their most vulnerable. That's when they are out and about in the campaign trail, coming face to face with the electorate, and there is always a scope for those that react badly to an individual politician's beliefs, enacting that in a violent way. So very concerning incident, this.
And he said after the milkshaking incident, he told a journalist, he gave his reasons why he thinks this happens to him, and he said it's because he's out and about with the public, very close to the public, and this sort of things happens when you are out and about. And so I guess the intention of these kind of incidents is to make him fearful of doing such things as this.
Well, very much so. I mean, he certainly is out and about with the public. He wants to be up close and personal to members of the public. But he's not the only politician that does that. I mean, especially local MPs. They're all out meeting their constituents at this particular time, building up to an election. So it is a particularly concerning and worrying period for those who are charged with ensuring that our politicians are kept safe from those that might want to cause them harm.
And yet policing this sort of incident is so very hard, because as we saw there, that was a lone wolf, a man in a crowd, acting alone by what we can see there. And obviously there were lots of people who were shocked and stunned, and some construction workers who tried to pin him to the floor. But how on earth can you police things like this when it's just a singular person with some rubble?
No, I mean, you can have a police presence and a security presence there, but if someone wants to act in the spur of the moment, it's very difficult to do anything other than react after the event and ensure that, you know, as much as you can, you try to protect someone from an attack and ensure that a suspect is arrested. But yeah, when you're in a public area and you're inviting members of the public to come forward to meet you as you want to present them with your political campaign, how can you guard against it? And that is the very difficult process that the police and security officials have to go through, as they have to try to look out for the known threats, but it's the unknown threats. You know, people that they don't know that are acting on the spur of the moment, that are often the most potentially dangerous individuals, depending what they decide to do.
Yes, and people could act as though they're supporters and then commit an incident like this. Thank you very much indeed, Mark White. We'll bring you any more updates as and when we get them.
Yes, we'll also be looking back at the Conservative Manifesto. Of course, Rishi Sunak announced that manifesto in a room full of journalists against a very boring blue background. Perhaps the reason why we see our politicians increasingly against these sort of indoor controlled venues is so that they can avoid those sort of attacks that we're increasingly seeing on the streets. But we'll have all the analysis of the Conservative Manifesto. What does it mean for you? And does it contain anything that could possibly shift the dial in this election?
Well, that's the question, isn't it, really? So get in touch, gbnews.com/your say. We'll be back in just a tick. This is, of course, Good Afternoon Britain. We're on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's our summer spectacular. 3 top prizes that have to be won. There's cash. £15,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like this summer. Plus a brand new iPhone 15 with a set of Apple AirPods. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also treat you to some fun in the sun with £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction this summer. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
Angela, what's on the menu?
Well, the menu today really is the battle between King Charles and Prince Andrew about his home, a royal lodge. It's gone on for quite a long time now because increasingly the place looks very dilapidated. No paint, raw under the way that